Welcome everyone to a meeting of the Boston Region Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'm David Mueller, representing Secretary Monica Tibbetts not here. You are invited to participate in our transportation planning process regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. You can read the full notice of your rights and protections at www.boston.org/MPO_NO_DISCRIMINATION. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, or if you have any technical difficulties, please contact Ibu Kurashi of the MPO staff at iquraishi@ctps.org or 857-702-3695 or via the chat box. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After roll call, board members may mute and unmute themselves. Always remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. Find this by clicking either on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with the raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. The chair will then call on the participants. Please raise your hand via Zoom if you would like to use AI Note Taker during this meeting. If you are on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. Could you please call the roll?
Certainly. Starting with MassDOT Seat 1.
David Mueller.
Thank you. MassDOT Seat 2.
Good morning, John Bouchard, representing Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver, present.
Good morning. MassDOT Highway Division.
John Romano, MassDOT Highway Division here.
Hello, John. Next is the MBTA.
Good morning, Sandy Johnson, representing General Manager Phil Eng and the MBTA.
Morning, Sandy. Regional Transportation Authorities Metro West Transit Authority.
Good morning, this is Tyler Tarasi representing the Administrator Jim Nee for the Metro West Regional Transit Authority here.
Welcome, Tyler. Massport. Do not see Sarah. MAPC.
Good morning, Eric Barassa with MAPC.
Good morning. Next, we have the MBTA Advisory Board. And do you see Brian? MBTA Advisory Board. I will return. I'm going to slow down here just a moment. I believe there will be a report as a formal welcome, but the Advisory Council.
Caitlin Allen Conley, Chair of the Advisory Council, Transit Matters.
Welcome, Caitlin. City of Boston, Seat 1.
Mayor Michelle Wu in the City of Boston.
Thank you. And I'm going to do a pause here also and go back to the MBTA Advisory Board.
Good morning, Hannah Solikowski, MBTA Advisory Board.
Hey, Brian's also here. He's
Wonderful.
apparently in the tunnel, though.
I'm here. Sorry, I couldn't get off mute. And Hannah's representing us. I just look forward to giving a report later.
Roger that and welcome both. City of Boston, Seat 2.
Hi, good morning. Patrick Hoey representing Mayor Michelle Wu in Boston Streets.
Hello, Patrick. At-large city, City of Everett.
Good morning. This is Eric Molinari representing Mayor Carlo Di Maria in the City of Everett.
Good morning, Eric. At-large city, City of Newton.
Good morning. David Kozis representing Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller in the City of Newton.
Morning, David. At-large town of Arlington.
Leonard Diggins representing Select Board Chair Diana Hahn.
Morning, Len. At-large town of Brookline. Just doing a quick search. Okay, do not see anyone from the town. Inner Core Committee, City of Somerville.
Good morning, Tom Bent, City of Somerville, representing Mayor Ballantyne.
Welcome, Tom. Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, Town of Acton. Okay, next is Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham. Dennis did actually message a little earlier that he had joined late. North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly. Do not see Darlene at the moment. North Suburban Planning Council, Town of Burlington.
Good morning. This is John Strauss representing the town of Burlington, and Mike Espayo, Chairman of the Select Board and the North Suburban Planning Council.
Morning, John. South Shore Coalition, Town of Hull.
Morning, Chris Diorio, representing Hull Select Board Chair Erwin Nessoff.
Hi, Chris. Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, Town of Rentham. Not see Rachel at the moment. And then Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Norwood.
Steve Olenoff representing the Trick subregion.
Hi, Steve. And I will go to our ex officio members. Is there anyone from the Federal Highway Administration with us today? Not see Anthony. And that I just want to say, is there anyone on the joined us board members that I have not yet called for the role? With that, I will pass it over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next item on the agenda is the chair's report. First, I'd like to announce that the Community Advisory Council has elected its chair and vice chair, and they will be participating from this meeting going forward. And the chair is Caitlin Allen Connolly from Transit Matters, and the vice chair is Carl Alexander, who I believe is from the, I lost it.
Mystic River Watershed Association, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. Welcome, both of you. Look forward to working with you. Next, I'd like to announce that the State Transportation Improvement Program was approved by the federal government before the shutdown. So we have a valid STIP. And then finally, just on the shutdown, federal government is shut down. We are still functioning as always. We are paying our bills. We are not getting reimbursed currently, but everything is moving forward until further notice. Any questions? Seeing none. Next item on the agenda is the Executive Director's report. Taken.
Thanks, David, and hi, everyone, and welcome to our new members from the Community Advisory Council. My name is Tegan Tyke. I am the Executive Director of the staff to the Boston Region MPO. And in these reports, I try to kind of highlight a few things going on, talk about staffing updates if we have any, and then I try to give a preview of the agenda for the day just to sort of highlight what we're going to be doing and put it in a larger context before then just sort of confirming next meeting dates. So that's what these reports are about. And so on the next slide, please. I had two kind of announcement buckets that I wanted to talk about. First, over the last month or two, I have told this board and at these meetings that I would be attending a number of professional development opportunities and networking opportunities for the MPO in September. So it was a really great month, and I wanted to report back on how a few of those events went. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to do that now. First of all, I had mentioned that I would join a summit in Chicago, which is hosted by the Shared Use Mobility Center, also known as SUMC. And that was for 2 days in September, on September 11th and 12th. The mission of SUMC is to replace car-centric transportation with people-focused shared mobility to fight climate change, promote equity, and strengthen community. So they have a fantastic mission. And the summit was fantastic. For the summit, they bring together change agents across the country to work to build coalitions so that we can work together to identify opportunities for change at a regional level in multiple major metro regions. So in the summit format, we were really able to dig into the types of inertia that we're up against when trying to implement change and strategize on how we can work together to create change through patience, through effective storytelling. That's a major theme. By making sure that we're engaging all sides of a conversation, including those who disagree with those goals or the pathways we're identifying to reach them, and all with the overarching goal of building trust and relationships. So there were a number of major metro regions that participated, and of course, they're all different. But I'd like to acknowledge that our Boston region conversations were grounded in the advantages that we do have. And in our case, that is that in the Boston region, we do have an existing robust, dense transportation and housing network and infrastructure in a way that some other metro areas are still struggling with, where we already have a very dense infrastructure. We also have a more consolidated operation of public transit compared to some of the other regions. And we also have, in our case in Massachusetts, both a region and a state and many municipalities that are already really well aligned at the highest level in terms of what our goals are related to mode shift, equity, climate resilience, and safety, among other things. So it was a really positive conversation. We had a lot of things to build on. The summit operates under what's known as Chatham rules, which is to bring forward what we learned without being attributable to any particular source, and that helps maintain a safe space for the summit. So with that caveat, if anybody would like to talk more about what we discussed and learned in that summit, I would be happy to follow up with you. So just reach out and let me know. Then right after that, over the weekend, I had an opportunity to join our fellow board member, the MBTA, specifically Lindsay Heffernan, the Chief of Policy and Strategic Planning, to give a presentation at the annual meeting of APTA, which is the American Public Transit Association. And at that session, a committee meeting, we talked about the successes of the MBTA and how the MBTA has been a really essential partner and collaborator with the MPO, which has helped lead to the kind of planning and capital investments that this MPO has been able to make into improving our core transit system, the MBTA. And then finally, following that, the following week from September 15th through 19th, I and quite a number of my colleagues, both in the Boston Region MPO staff, but as well as from other MPOs across the state, as well as some of our state partners at Office of Transportation Planning at MassDOT. We all attended the annual conference of the National Association of MPOs, or AMPO, in Providence, Rhode Island. And I will say, even given some of the challenging context that the chair reported on earlier in this meeting, and sort of how even though we're trying to adapt to a lot of changing information and funding practices in this administration, it was still a very positive energy that was at the conference, where we were really able to talk about how MPOs are effective as a space for stewarding federal dollars and making change. So there are a couple of key takeaways that my staff have pulled together just to highlight. Things that we discussed are things that how MPOs are in a uniquely well-positioned place to serve as coalition builders across multiple levels of governments and public agencies. That MPOs across the country are exploring really innovative ways to use data and also practical ways to get things done through pilot and demonstration projects, which our MPO is certainly a part of. We've been seeing MPOs, including ours across the country, working to set best practices and engagement. And using data and visualization to bolster that engagement, which is again something you'll hear about actually later on the agenda today. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight, hopefully we can put a link in the chat, that AMPO has updated its policy priorities for the next transportation reauthorization. So I welcome you all to take a look at their most recent report. It's called Next Stop Reauthorization, and this is the third version of that policy roadmap that they've developed. And next, the second bullet, go back. Second bullet on here. Sorry, it took me a while to get through that, but I thought it was useful to talk about this investment that y'all have made in our professional development. At the annual meeting, we'll be approving the slate of committee members for the year. So today, during the committee chair reports, each committee chair will be joining to describe the committee's work and what that entails, and seek interest from you all as board members in whether you would like to serve on those respective groups. We do ask that board members really try to join at least one of the committees, the benefit being that they're a forum where you can dive a bit deeper into topic or focus areas than we typically can at our typically very fully packed board meetings. So to express interest after today's meeting, please contact Ibu Qureshi Dave Hong, and the committee chair with a very short email. And all of those contacts will be shared in the chat either now or following my report. Now, next slide. Thank you. So I do have two bittersweet staffing announcements to make today. Next slide, please. So Stella Jordan, our senior planner and communications and engagement team, is going to be departing us. Her last day is actually tomorrow. So to say a few words about her, she joined the MPO in December of 2021 as our first public engagement program manager. And then in the nearly 4 years since then, she's done so much for the agency. She's led the restructuring of the MPO's advisory body, the Community Advisory Council. She has helped evolve our public engagement work by implementing best practices like compensating community-based organizations for their time. She's worked hard to apply quantitative and qualitative analysis to engagement data, which you'll hear more about again later in this agenda. And she's also really worked to refine how we do our engagement to represent underrepresented and disadvantaged communities, grounding it in the work of the IAP2 Spectrum, which is the International Association of Public Participation. So we'll happily share a link to that as well. I also wanted to highlight that when she started with us, she co-led the Blue Hills Discrete Study in 2022 that eventually led to an MBTA pilot that did happen this year that increased bus access to the Blue Hills to underserved populations. And then she also served as a member of the AMPO Policy Committee for a few years during her 4 years with us as well. So she's done a ton. We're sad to lose her, but she's leaving the MPO for an exciting new job as a senior planner for the city of Burlington, Vermont. So if you're in that area, you can say hello to her there. Next slide. So also in December, Seth Asante, our chief planner in the multimodal planning and design group, will be retiring after 29 years of service to the MPO. So that's a big celebration and also a sad goodbye, but also congratulating him on his retirement. Since he's been with us starting in 1996, Seth's made a lot of contributions to our region's transportation system with his insightful and impactful collaboration and planning work. As an example, I know you're all many of you are familiar with. He launched the Express Highway Bottleneck Studies, which identified low-cost improvements for MassDOT that have been able to be implemented on I-90, 93, 95, Route 3, and 24. So sort of like low investment, low cost projects that have had a significant impact on relieving congestion and also air quality impacts. Without increasing capacity. So if you know Seth, you know he's really practical. He works very hard to come up with implementable solutions at all kinds of scales of projects. So he also initiated the corridor and intersection study work that has become a cornerstone of what the multimodal planning and design team does now. And part of that work has been to really build really excellent partnerships with the municipalities, in addition to MassDOT and other stakeholders, to do those many corridor and intersection studies that he's been involved in. So we'll really miss him and his ability to make sure that the planning work that we do at the MPO results in real projects. And it's just, I hope we can give him a few moments to say a few words to this board. His last day will be in a few months on December 4th. But Seth, if you'd like to say a few words now, we'd welcome you saying a few to the board.
Yeah, thank you, Tegan, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to the board for their support and guidance. As I transition to the next chapter of my life, I'm confident I will look back on our accomplishments with pride. Thank you once again for everything.
Hey, Tegan, let me just take a second because I actually was working here when Seth started at CPS. So Seth, I just want to say it's been great, and you're a consummate professional, and I will miss working with you. It was wonderful. Have a great retirement, man.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And Seth, we'll have Seth for a few more months yet, so don't worry. This is not his last time in front of the board, I'm sure. All right, with all of those announcements, let's go on to the next slide, please. Oh, we may be stuck, but I can sort of start talking. Oh, there we go. Today's agenda. Next slide again, please. So for today, we have a lot of really great stuff on the agenda. First, as the chair announced earlier, the FFY 26 to 30 TIP is now active. So we will be presenting to you adjustment 1 today. Ethan will talk about how this adjustment has some cost changes around the procurement of blue bikes, also the procurement of greenhouse gas emissions, air quality sensors that we're going to use to evaluate projects on the TIP, as well as some cost changes for our projects in Cambridge. But as a reminder, this is an adjustment, so those numbers are relatively small. It's not an amendment, so it does require a vote for approval, but it won't require a public comment period for that approval. Then Ethan will continue and talk to us a bit more about revising the TIP project rescoring policy. He'll talk about some proposed automatic rescoring for projects that are on the TIP that were evaluated under criteria in retired or past long-range transportation plans. So this is a conversation that's continually building on both the project cost policy that this board adopted in 2021, but also the additional policies that you're talking about now. And we're spending a lot of time over these couple of months with the TIP Process Engagement and Readiness Committee to talk about policies that will help empower this board's ability to make decisions around the TIP. So Ethan will give us that update, and then we'll have a few presentations on discrete studies. These are more like one-off standout studies on topics that have been discussed with the board and reported on from the scoping stage to now the completion stage. So the ones we'll talk about today are the Blue Bike and MBTA connections work, which was an analysis to understand both the connections and synergy between our Blue Bikes bike share system and the MBTA system. And then also we'll have a presentation on decarbonizing in the freight sector, which was an exploration of the potential for using cargo e-bikes for first last mile freight deliveries. And then finally, Stella Jordan, as I mentioned, as our last presentation to the board, will present along with Aaron McGuire and Jia Huang, and we'll present you the quarterly engagement dashboard update, as well as an annual evaluation of the engagement impacts and effectiveness for the past year. Next slide. So the next meeting, the next normal meeting of the MPO will be on October 23rd. That will be at our usual time at 10 a.m. and virtual. And then next slide, please. The very meeting following that, you'll have a slightly longer break, will be the annual meeting that is on November 13th. Note, I cannot stress enough that it does have a different time. It will be in the afternoon starting at 1 o'clock. It will be hybrid, really emphasizing that there's the in-person option at the Transportation Boardroom, which is on the second floor at 10 Park Plaza. We are expecting the Secretary of Transportation to preside for at least a portion of that meeting, and we have shared a draft agenda with folks. It's still in development, but just sort of note that we estimate it'll be about a 2.5-hour meeting ending sometime around 3:15. And then my last reminder, and then I'll wrap up, is that we will have refreshments and networking outside of the boardroom beginning at about 12:30. So you're welcome to gather early for that meeting. And please remember that there are no food or drinks allowed in the Transportation Boardroom. So with that, Mr. Chair, thanks for everyone's patience, and I look forward to the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Tegan. Any questions for Tegan? Seeing none, next item on the agenda is public comments. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment at this time? Bill Degnan.
Thanks and good morning, MPO Board. I'm just here to speak in support of the TIP adjustment for the Fitchburg Crossing project in Cambridge. We appreciate the board's support on that project, and I'm here to answer any questions that come up during discussion. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments at this time? Seeing none, if you have a comment during the meeting, please raise your hand and we will try to call on you. Next up, committee chairs reports. Are there any? Yes, there is. And the first is Derek Schuster.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Derek Schuster. I am the interim chair of the UPWP committee. The UPWP committee reviews and deliberates on the development of the MPO's annual Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP, which describes the work that MPO staff will conduct in the next federal fiscal year. The committee provides input on the studies and work tasks that will be included in the upcoming UPWP and ultimately recommends approval of the document from the MPO board. This committee meets as needed throughout the year, with more frequent meetings in the winter and spring to coincide with UPWP development, typically monthly. Meetings are usually on Thursdays at 1 p.m., and new members have the option to meet with MPO staff for a brief orientation of the UPWP process and committee's roles. The UPWP committee has 10 members currently, and committees have a maximum membership of 11. If you are interested in joining the committee, or if you are a current member of the committee that is no longer able to participate, please email Derek Schuster and CC David Hong and Ibu Karashi. I'll put my email in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Brian Kane.
Thanks very much, David. And happy fiscal new year to one and all. The federal fiscal year began. And with that, one of the fiscal years that the staff abide by, I chair the Administration and Finance Committee, and wanted to, like was just said, like Derek just said, invite anybody to join us. This committee we review and deliberate on administrative and finance matters that come before the board. This is the annual operating budget, quarterly updates, and we talk a lot about how things are going at CTPS, how the staff is doing, and what an amazing job Tegan is doing. And anything else that comes before the MPO that the MPO board asks us to look at. This committee is not a lot of heavy lifting. We meet quarterly, usually an hour before an MPO meeting at 9, never for longer than an hour, and 4 times a year. So I think it's certainly something that we would love more folks, especially more regional folks to consider. Caitlin Allen Conley, I'm looking at you. I am on this. I chair this with the MBTA Advisory Board. We also have folks from the Metro West Regional Collaborative, OTP, MAPC, and Boston. So if you'd like to join, we'd love to have you. Please reach out to the amazing staff or to me. Again, I'll also put my email in the chat. And David, I appreciate the time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Eric Molinari.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sitting in for Jay Monty, who chairs the Congestion Management Process Committee. The committee meets to guide the development and implementation of the CMP, recommending projects and programs to reduce congestion and improve mobility, safety, and efficiency. In fiscal year 25, the CMP committee provided feedback to the roadway pricing discrete study and development of a multimodal CMP network. The committee meets quarterly or as needed. The meetings are typically held on Thursdays at 9 a.m. before these board meetings. The current members are the City of Boston, the Three Rivers Interlocal Council, the MBTA Advisory Board, Community Advisory Council, MassDOT Highway, Massport, City of Everett, and City of Arlington. Any board members who are interested in serving on the committee are requested to reach out to Jay Monty, the committee chair, by October 22nd, and I will make sure to put his information in the chat. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Eric. Jen Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The TIP Process Engagement and Readiness Committee, sometimes referred to as TIPPER, we support the development of the TIP during each year. It's a forum for additional discussion of major challenges and initiatives. We have a slate of 11 members, the full slate. At the same time, if you're interested in joining or no longer interested in being a member, you can email me and CC David Hong, Ibu, and Ethan. We also always welcome participation beyond the formal membership, and usually we do have a good crew of other members and interested parties who join us for those meetings. We last met following the MPO meeting on September 4th, and we discussed a set of 5-year readiness guidelines that we've been working on alongside staff for the better part of the summer. And these guidelines define the stage at which a project may enter the TIP, and also set expectations for how design should progress year over year. in order for a project to maintain its initially programmed federal fiscal year. So these are, under development, still a lot of conversation to be had, including at our next meeting, which is scheduled for the afternoon of November 6th, following the MPO meeting. We'll also, given that that'll be our first TIPper for the new federal fiscal year, we'll be kind of kicking off the next TIP development cycle with sort of a preview of some key dates. So thank you, and look forward to seeing many of you then.
Thank you, Jen. And thanks to all the people who are willing to be chairs. It's a hard job and you all do it very well. Thank you so much. Next up is the Community Advisory Council report. Caitlin?
Great.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carl is also on this meeting today, and Carl and I are incredibly grateful and humbled to be elected as the chair and vice chair of the Community Advisory Council. Over the last few weeks, we've had the opportunity to be onboarded with MPO staff, and really just want to, special shout out to Tegan, Stella, Sean, and Gia, really for their support in getting us up to speed. The last Community Advisory Council meeting was held on Monday this week. Carl was there. I had a conflict. The meeting focused on reviewing the MPO's major planning cycles and programs, and also highlighting opportunities for the Advisory Council to be a part of the different areas of the MPO committees, and how we can collectively help to influence regional transportation decisions. Again, Carl and I are grateful to represent the council, and we look forward to bringing the council's collective voice to the board and to the committee meetings, and really to the process as a whole. So just thank you very much.
Thank you, Caitlin. Any questions for Caitlin? Seeing none, next item on the agenda is the approval of the July 17th minutes. Can I get a motion in a second to approve the minutes, please? Eric Barassa.
Good morning, Eric Barassa, MAPC. I'll make a motion to approve the July 17th meeting minutes.
Jen Rowe.
This is Jen Rowe, City of Boston, and I will second that motion.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any comments, changes, questions, or suggestions on these minutes? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Absolutely. David Moeller,
Yes.
Don Bouchard,
Don Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
Don Romano abstains. I was not here that day.
Roger that. Thank you. Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnson, yes.
Tyler Terrassi,
Tyler Terrassi, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Somebody needs to mute, please. Thank you. Keep going, Dave.
I'm gonna unmute. That was actually I'm gonna call Hannah Switlikowski. I'm so sorry, I inadvertently muted Hannah when she was going to vote. I will return, and Hannah, you can just raise your hand.
Can I vote yes
Caitlin
on behalf of the
Powers?
advisory board, please?
Yeah.
And
You're
now she's
welcome.
back.
Hi,
Of
I'm
course.
unmuted now. I was going to say abstain since I was not present at the last meeting. We had Frank on.
We're still a yes. They're fine.
Okay.
Okay, I'll record that. Thank you. Caitlin Allen Connolly.
Yes.
Thank you. Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Patrick Hoey,
Abstain, not present.
Roger. Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, abstain. I was not present.
understood. Thank you.
Yep.
David Kosis,
David Kosis, yes.
Len Diggins,
Sorry about that. And the space bar wasn't working. Diggins, yes.
Thank you. No problem. Next is Tom Bent.
Tom Benton, yes.
Going to go to Darlene Nguyen.
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
And actually returning to Dennis Giambetti on a set of minutes
Dennis
here.
Giambetti, yes.
Thank you. Next is John Strauss.
John Strauss, yes.
Christy Iorio.
Christy Iorio, yes.
Steve Olenoff.
Tom O'Rourke is here to represent the Trick subregion. Tom?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. We'll vote yes.
Thank you. And that motion carries. And I call the roll, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That was so much fun. Let's do it again. August 7th minutes. Can I get a motion and a second to approve them? Please state your name for the record. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, MAPC. I'll also make a motion to approve the August 7th meeting minutes.
Jen Rowe.
Then I will second that motion.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any comments, changes, questions, or suggestions? Seeing none, please call the roll, Dave.
Slowly, David Moeller.
Yes.
John Bouchard.
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano.
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston.
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Tyler Tarasi.
Tyler Tarasi, yes.
Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski.
Hannah Swilikowski, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly.
Recuse, I was not present in that.
Roger. Jen Rowe.
Jen Rowe, yes.
Patrick Hoey.
Patrick Hoey abstain, not present.
Thank you. Eric Molinari.
Eric Molinari abstain. I was not present.
Acknowledged. David Kozis.
David Kozis, yes.
Len Diggins.
Diggins, yes.
Tom Bent.
Tom Benton, yes.
Dennis Giambetti.
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen.
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
John Strauss.
John Strauss, yes.
Christy Iorio. Christy Iorio.
Christy
I'll
Iorio,
call
yes.
Tom O'Rourke. Acknowledged, thank you. Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Transportation Improvement Program. Administrative Adjustment number 1. Ethan Lapointe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everybody. My name is Ethan Lapointe. I'm a senior transportation planner on MPO staff. So today's presentation, now that we have the federal fiscal years 2026 to 30 tip in effect, is to do our first adjustment to that tip. And I'd also note that I believe contrary to what was listed on the agenda for this is actually a full adjustment, not an administrative adjustment. We do have the materials for this adjustment that were posted about 48 hours ago in advance of this, or rather actually as early as Thursday. Now, with that said, if we can go on to the next slide, I will start off by saying that this is an action item as well, so we will be asking for a vote at the end of this adjustment. Adjustment 1 includes 3 project changes overall, includes 2 changes to projects in federal fiscal year 2026 and 1 project in federal fiscal year 2027. These are all MPO regional target funded projects. This includes for fiscal 26 a blue bike station replacement contract in Cambridge and an air quality sensor procurement project that MPO staff are undertaking to support analysis and understanding of greenhouse gas benefits or impacts delivered through TIP projects that are being funded elsewhere or through our programs. In fiscal 27, there's also a funding change for the design of the Fitchburg line crossing in Cambridge that was alluded to during the public comment stage of this meeting. So if we can go on to the next slide, I'll go into detail on each of these projects and the rationale behind the changes here. The first is around the Blue Bike Station replacement contract for the city of Cambridge. This project's current budget for federal fiscal year 2026 is $223,715. Is proposed for a revision up to $385,456. This is an increase of $161,741. This reflects the latest cost estimate the city has for replacing blue bike stations within the city, also based on the scope of work that was approved for this project when it sought funding during the federal fiscal year's 2630 tip. So the scope of work is the same for this effort. This is just the accurate cost estimate for all of the blue bikes work that Cambridge is conducting for this year, or using MPO funding for this year. Similarly, the next line item is for the procurement and installation of 5 air quality sensors for greenhouse gas monitoring. So this effort is a project that will be procuring 5 air sensors, 5 weather monitors for each of those sensors, associated power systems, and also a 5-year package of software access to utilize the data generated from these systems to identify the benefits of different roadway projects that the TIP is funding throughout the Boston region. This is based on a methodology that's currently being employed by some researchers at Northeastern University who are working with the town of Brookline and city of Chelsea on a similar effort. Now, as far as the actual rationale behind this adjustment, the project was listed at $43,000 in the original tip, and due to federal import tax policy changes, the vendor has now provided a new quote of $63,700 for that same level of purchase for those 5 sensors, monitors, etc. So this is a net increase of $20,700 in response to those import taxes and that new quote from the vendor for these services. If we can go on to the next slide. This then takes us into federal fiscal year 2027 changes. Now, this is for the design only of the shared use path project for the Fitchburg line crossing at Dennehy Park in the city of Cambridge. For a little bit of context here, this project is currently funded solely in federal fiscal year 2026 at about $2 million. Now, of that, $1.6 million is federal funding, and $400,000 of that is match being provided by the city of Cambridge. The net increase in the project's overall cost is $400,000. The reason being is that the city of Cambridge is actually providing a total match to the overall project budget of $900,000 here. Because the overall cost of the contract, based on their latest quote from their selected consultant, has gone up by $400,000, that is being reflected in the tip for fiscal 27 to go up by that $400,000 with the associated 20% match, taking it to $500,000. The reason I mention this is that because this is a tip adjustment, the threshold for a project to be included in a tip adjustment is $500,000 or is less than $500,000. So this breaches that threshold technically by $1, but it is only a real increase in cost of $400,000. And I will note that this project is being incorporated into fiscal 27, as by providing this funding in the tip in that year, it does allow the city to move forward with their procured or selected consultant to make sure they can obligate all funding that they have available before the end of the federal fiscal year, so that they can also obligate remaining funding from a Reconnecting Communities grant. So there are a lot of different funding sources that are at play or were at play on this project, but the bottom line here is that this is functionally an increase of $400,000, although it will be listed for $500,000. If we go on the next slide, because we'll be quickly moving into questions here, and the one after that, please. MPO staff are requesting that this board votes to endorse adjustment 1 to the 2026 to 30 tip, and I'll happily take any questions.
Thank you, Ethan. Questions? Lynn Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So of course I'm going to be supporting the endorsement, of it being, but I'm curious, those are pretty significant increases in costs being on the blue bikes in particular. I mean, I certainly understand what's going on with the import taxes. Yeah, thank you. And I have to say, I'm a little bit concerned, about the implications of that on costs, of other projects, so I think we should just be, prepared for more cost increases with that as a rationale. But on the blue bikes, this what's going on?
So I can actually speak a little bit more to the blue bikes contract in particular, as there was an adjustment, I believe, during the federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 tip that actually lowered the overall price of the initial procurement that the city of Cambridge had done for blue bikes. So a portion of this increase is based on the new cost of the overall quote, but this is sort of a course correction from that original adjustment that was conducted in the tip for fiscal 25, if that also makes sense. So a portion of this is cost increases, but another portion, I believe, is just based on getting a more accurate vendor quote than we may have had about 1 or 2 months ago.
Okay. All right, good, thank you. And the other on the bridge, so I understand what's going on in terms of the overall cost increase, but I'm just trying to understand, why is it programmed for fiscal year 27 and not 26?
So the rationale behind putting the funding in fiscal 27 was the fact that there are other projects that MPO staff currently believe may be looking to use the fiscal 26 funding that are advertising in fiscal 26 for construction funding. Also as well, because the MPO had not voted to fund the design of the project for more than $2 million in fiscal 26 during development of the 2026 to 30 tip, there is a possibility that with that funding may be moved up out of 27 into 26 when we look to develop the 2027 to 31 tip. So by putting that funding in 2027 to 31, it does allow for further review of that additional funding at a later date when the tip is in development.
Okay, I got you.
By
Okay.
incorporating it in this adjustment, I'd also note that this also allows the city to move forward with their procurement now. So even though that decision may be made at a later date again, they can still move forward with taking a consultant under contract to continue design work.
I got you, because the concern was that we're kind of like programming the design money, seemingly after we like program the bill. So okay, thank you, appreciate that, Keithan. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to take my own turn here because I'm totally confused by your answers. So let's start with blue bikes. It's a 72% increase. It's been programmed in the tip for a year. And now what you're telling me is we went down and now we're going back up and we're going up back up even more. I'm totally confused. Like when community connections, some community comes to community connections and says we want to do this program, they have an estimate based on something. And are these blue bike replacements? Like didn't they already know? Didn't we already know how many blue bike stations we were buying and generally what the cost was? This is I'm going to vote yes on this blue bikes thing. I think we should do this, but I'm like, I don't understand. Explain it again.
Yes, so there are multiple blue bikes contracts that were procured through community connections for the city of Cambridge, starting in fiscal 24, then 5, then 6. For the 25-29 tip, there was an amendment for a blue bikes procurement for fiscal 25 that was actually, the cost reduction was lower than what it actually should have been based on the quote. There was also a...
Wait a minute, wait. Explain that.
So that was due to staff error on that part when the adjustment was filed there.
MPO staff error.
I'll take credit for that
No,
error.
I'm not asking you to take credit. I'm not even angry at anybody. People make errors. It's fine. It's whatever, right? But this was like, this is nothing that the city of Cambridge did. We actually made a mistake in-house, and that's fine. Like, again, I'm not trying to dun anybody in public, right? People make mistakes. Shit happens. Oh, I'm sorry. Stuff happens. I'm sorry. So, but that was an MPO error that we're correcting.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So it was, the cost was too low on the original one. This
Got
one
it.
is making them whole. And this is
No
based on their
problem.
application forms as well. So
Okay, so
this was on the city.
what's the additional difference then? Like if it increased by 72%. The inadvertent error we made wasn't a 72% error, right? We went too low and we adjusted, but now we're going above what we would have had to adjust to account for how low, the fact that we went too low.
Correct. I believe the total delta is only about $40,000 as far as what is actually increased.
Okay. And then now on the other project, again, not the sensors, because I agree with Lynn, tariffs cost to go up, right? Whatever. But the Cambridge one, the Fitchburg Commuter Rail Line crossing. We're doing it in 27 because we don't have the space in 26.
There is funding in 26 to support that. With that said, the funding in 26 is, there are currently several projects that have low or have insufficient funding programmed in fiscal 26 against their current TFPCs or based on the latest TFPCs. Those are larger capital projects. There's about 2 million currently in reserve for regional target in fiscal 26.
Yep.
In the interest of bringing those as a future action to the MPO for consideration, this Cambridge project was slotted for fiscal 27, considering as well that the design will take several years to take place as well. So,
All right. So it's going to take more than a year to do this design.
right. In addition to other funding considerations as well that I mentioned, but that is another reason.
Okay. Derek Schuster, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. A few slides back for the sensors, I just wanted to verify the project ID that was on the screen. One more. Okay, so your records and the materials are correct, but the slide deck's not. So for record purposes, the project ID for the procurement of installation of 5 air quality sensors is S13291, not S12961. I just wanted to verify that in case it mattered for folks or people were looking up the project by ID. S13291 should be the project ID. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Any other questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to approve this adjustment as presented today? And this requires no public advertisement, correct? This is a final vote.
Correct.
Okay. Lynn Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make the motion to approve the adjustment.
Thank you, Jen Rowe.
I'll second the motion.
Please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Tyler Terrassi,
Tyler Terrassi, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Anna Switlikowski,
Anna Swilakowski, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly,
Yes.
Jen Rowe,
General, yes.
Patrick Hoey,
Patrick Hoey, yes.
Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Benton, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Sorry, couldn't find it fast enough. Darlene Wynn, yes.
no problem, and thank you. John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Christy Aria,
Christy Orio, yes.
I will call Aaron Shute,
Thank you. Aaron Chute, Town of Brookline, yes.
thank you. Look at the participants list. Tom O'Rourke,
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
anyone I have not called?
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Thank you, Dennis. Anyone else? With that, motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the revised TIP project rescoring policy and practice for improved program decision-making. Ethan LaPointe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we can move on to the next slide. So as part of today's presentation, I'll just go over a couple high-level items that are included in here today. We'll start off with just listing some of the materials that were provided for this presentation, state an objective as to what the purpose of this action that staff are looking to undertake is, provide some additional background on the rescoring policies that the MPO has already adopted, that this proposed rescoring policy is only looking to reinforce, go into detail as to the elements of the update for this policy, and also some of the timeline for what this the implementation of this policy is doing versus some of the ongoing work that staff are already undertaking for this upcoming TIP development cycle. So if we can go on to the next slide, we'll get into the materials for today. So 1 week ago, staff listed the policy memo associated with this action on the MPO meeting calendar. I will also note that in addition to listing this memo was also subject to prior review by members of the TIP Process Engagement and Readiness Committee, who are also invited to provide feedback on the draft text for the memo to be incorporated into this. So we also want to thank members of that committee for providing any feedback or that early review as well. I'll also note that if folks would like to reference this memo during the meeting, not only is it available on the MPO meeting calendar, the memo also includes links to the original 2021 programming policies to address TIP project cost increases embedded in there, which the shorthand I will refer to for the remainder of the meeting is the TIP project cost policies. So with that, if we go on to the next slide, today's objective is based on the fact that this is the first meeting following the adoption of federal fiscal year 2026. And with the start of federal fiscal year 2026, so too does the beginning of the development of the federal fiscal years 2027 to 31 TIP. Now, with staff begin the solicitation process that later this month for new projects and are continuing to undertake a rescoring process for certain projects that are previously brought to the board, staff are today asking this board to vote on a policy update that's designed to address some of the challenges that have been encountered in developing prior TIPs to sort of codify an exercise for longer term TIP activities. Doing so, what we believe will provide the board with better information that can be utilized when creating the program of projects for the 2027-31 TIP and also later TIPs as well. We'll get into that in today's presentation. Now, I'll provide a little bit of background on existing project rescoring policies if we go on to the next slide. I'm going to be going through this in part because this is one of multiple, and if we can go on the next slide as well, please. It's part of one of multiple initiatives that MPO staff, the TIP Process Engagement Readiness Committee, and other stakeholders have been working on to bring to this board to try and resolve different issues as far as the readiness of different projects around the TIP and the information available to make decisions as to programming for these projects. So again, these are also not the first policies that the board has been presented with or has adopted in the past. The 2021 TIP project cost policies include 3 major interventions. One around project design, that being the original 2021 25% project design status, improved communication for additional touch points between stakeholders, and the focus of today's presentation, an intervention around establishing a project rescoring policy for cost increases beyond a given threshold. Now, if we go on the next slide, I'll note the current project rescoring policy that was codified in that September 2021 policy enactment has several major shortcomings. The first, if we go on to the next slide, is around incomplete project information. As currently the current policy that's in effect does not establish a uniform set of information that project proponents would actually have to furnish to MPO staff and the MPO board to be rescored. This has led to not only information gaps in terms of the amount of information that proponents are providing and the quality of that information at times, but also a level of recency, where often projects that may have been on the TIP for over 5 years are using project applications that are 7 or 6 years old and are therefore maybe out of date with many of the other materials that other projects are developing at that time. And on the next slide, there's then the matter of insufficient time to deliberate or act on information when provided. So, for example, the current policy as written relies on the MPO board to react to project cost increases that are often being reported after TIP readiness days in February. And based on how the current cost policies are written, for each project that were to trigger a $2.5 million cost increase or a 25% cost increase, each of those projects would individually have to go to the MPO board and provide their rationale and justification for that cost increase. Now, if we use the examples from the 2026 to 30 TIP as context there, during development of that TIP cycle, there were 12 projects that exceeded that cost threshold trigger as far as rescoring. And so, with these cost increases being identified in late February and the need to release a draft TIP for comment in mid-April, there's insufficient time at board meetings to actually have those kinds of presentations from project proponents. And I'd also add there's also insufficient time at TIP committee meetings to do that either. Moreover, given that is only a little over a month, there's also insufficient time to actually even do the undertaking of rescoring those projects before those scenarios are finalized in the first week of April. So functionally, there's insufficient time to discuss, and there's insufficient time to even undertake the act of rescoring in the first place. Next, on the next slide, is a fairly narrow scope of review under the current policies, namely the fact that the current policies we're in is overlooking projects that are being repeatedly delayed. It's worth noting that generally, the times when projects are surpassing these cost thresholds that are codified in the policy are ones that are typically projects that are advancing along to new design stages that would warrant a new project cost submission. And because only projects that are surpassing cost thresholds are being rescored, there are many projects that may be overlooked if they're getting repeatedly delayed each year and not making substantial progress, but may have a high cost risk when they do reach a new design threshold. It's also again worth noting that projects are only being selected for rescoring when the MPO board votes to individually select those projects. So some projects that should be rescored are may be overlooked would that take place. And again, projects overall, if they are being stalled in their design process, are not being reevaluated or reconsidered. And last but not least, if we go on the next slide, this is something that matters with the spirit of the original 2021 cost policies and intent there. And that is around the policy's current requirement for the board to select individual projects for rescoring. Namely, the spirit of the original policy was to provide a fair, balanced, and unbiased set of guidelines for reevaluating and reconsidering projects based on their scores, their readiness considerations, or cost estimates. And because this policy requires a project to be selected, which puts members in a difficult position as far as having to target a project in this case, the MPO board has never actually requested that a project be rescored, despite many projects having breached these rescoring triggers over the past past 3 tip cycles during when these policies were in effect. It's also worth noting that there is currently no insulation for board members as far as any negative consequences that project proponents who would be subject to a rescoring or project removal may submit after something would take place there. So with all of that in mind, as far as how these policies may be addressed, if we go on to the next slide and the one after, what staff are really looking to do here is not to replace the policy, but rather reinforce the existing tip project cost policy with one mechanism, which is the automatic rescoring requirement. Now, I'll be referring here to something that I'll say is outdated project criteria. And the automatic project rescoring is meant to apply to projects that have scores conducted under outdated criteria. When I say outdated, what I'm actually saying here is that this is criteria that was based on a long-range transportation plan that's 5 or more years old. So for example, the rescoring staff are doing right now is based on the project evaluation framework that was actually under the LRTP before Destination 2040. So the LRTP before the precursor to the current LRTP, Destination 2050. And the reason why this is important is that the LRTPs establish different goals and objectives within the document, which also change and determine tip criteria. So for example, the previous LRTP had a system preservation and modernization goal. The current LRTP has a resilience goal area. And even though there are at times overlap in the criteria, there are substantial differences in how projects are being scored. We can go on to the next slide. I'll talk very briefly about how we're addressing each of the 4 key areas that I mentioned earlier that were shortcomings of the current policy with the new policy. If we go on to the next slide, for incomplete project application, this new approach ensures that there's consistent applications, procedure, and documentation for project proponents. It also ensures that because there's a consistent workflow, we can set expectations for project proponents when they apply to get on the tip in the first place, as far as when they might be rescored. As far as insufficient time for action and deliberation, this solicitation would take place in the fall, with scoring complete by the spring to ensure that it is ready for when any cost changes emerge. And for a narrow scope of review, it also makes sure that there are many or far fewer projects that may be overlooked, and it also goes back to those clear expectations that I mentioned earlier. And again, for a fair and objective decision-making process, this is applying to all projects under a given threshold based on the amount of time they've been on the tip, nothing that may be specific to that project or the proponent. So with that, if we can go on to the next slide, I'd also know that there's a secondary benefit as well to all these other areas. And this again is meant to reinforce the connections between the TIP and the other activities and priorities that this MPO advances. Namely, that project evaluations are the underpinning of understanding the overall process for certification documents. The project score is meant to determine the extent to which and measure the extent to which project fund in the TIP is moving the needle on the MPO's vision and goals. By having a better understanding of what the TIP is actually funding, by keeping project scores and evaluations up to date, this makes sure that we can actually evaluate regional impacts of projects. And that also feeds our performance-based planning program and also directly leads into supporting our unified planning work program. So with all that in mind, if we go on to the next slide and the one after that, please, I'll then get into the actual implementation of the policy as proposed here. So the first test of this policy is already underway based on a prior presentation that MPO staff provided. So MPO staff solicited new project information for 13 projects just to help support decision-making in the 2027 to 31 TIP to sort of pilot this exercise. And any lessons or feedback that staff generate from this test may be incorporated into this policy at a later date and will benefit future work. We started this solicitation the first week of September, and we've started receiving some project information here. We're hoping to have all of this project information in by the end of the calendar year. I'll also note that this solicitation period overlaps with the new project application period, which will be opening at the end of October. So we'll be scoring or doing our rescoring in tandem with the initial scoring of all of the new project applications as well. And on the next slide, as far as what is actually being conducted here for this policy or the result of any vote that's taken here today, while there may be revisions and updates made to the policy today, any further rescoring beyond what staff are currently doing would actually not take place until development of the federal fiscal years 2029 to 33 TIP. And currently, there are 14 projects that are currently funded in the 2026 to 30 TIP that may be rescored if they're still on the TIP come the 2029 to 33 cycle. The projects that would be subject to this rescoring the next time it takes place would have been projects that would have been funded under the 2022 to 26 TIP, the 2023 to 27 TIP, or the 2024 to 28 TIP. And I'll also note as well that any projects included in those TIPs would not have been programmed in a federal fiscal year that appears in the 2933 window, which is to say that any project that does successfully advertise by its original program year would not be subject to this kind of rescoring. So if projects are consistently making their advertisement dates in the years in which they're programmed, they are not subject to this policy if things are moving forward. I'll also note as well that the third group would also not be scored until the 2033 to 37 TIP. So this policy does have fairly large gaps in between when the automatic rescoring is taking place. But as I mentioned earlier, there are other policies that are also being worked on with the TIP committee to help address a variety of key issues, causes, or results of these project readiness elements. This is just one strategy that staff are pursuing to help mitigate some of these issues. So if we can go on to the next slide, as far as today's requested action, staff are requesting that, and on the next slide, please, that the board vote to endorse this update to the project rescoring policy, and we will be sure to provide updates on how rescoring is going to the board in the spring. And as I mentioned, any additional policy improvements for scoring, readiness, cost management, and scope management are also going to be forthcoming at future MPO meetings and also meetings of the TIP committee. With that, I'm happy to take any questions on this as well.
Thank you, Ethan. Questions? Glenn?
I waited. So
Yeah, I was waiting too, Lynn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Are the proponents complying that we are asking for information to rescore? What I'm getting at is, do we have an enforcing mechanism, to make sure people comply when we request?
That's a very good question. So we do have some proponents that have already provided information. We've also heard from folks at MassDOT. There are some projects that are MassDOT proponent projects, and we do know that there are MassDOT staff on the program management team that are also providing that information for MassDOT proponent projects as well. In the case of projects where we are not seeing any information come through there, in those events, we will bring that to the MPO board for further decision. But if a project does not provide sufficient information to be rescored for certain criteria areas, then it would get a 0 in that criteria area. So if there's gaps in information for the rescoring, it will not earn points if they don't fill out the answer.
Okay, I mean, there's more I think to be taken up in the Tipper committee, like, and so I'll save it for later on. But once again, thanks for all the work. Sorry, I didn't reply. The reason will become apparent later on.
Jin Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to staff and the TIP committee members. I'm really glad we're, I think, getting ahead of this in a real way. Last year we had, I think, directed staff to do some rescoring, and I think what we learned from that was that it was we didn't give ourselves enough time to do that, and so we didn't really have information in time for the real the real TIP development negotiation season that we all know we get into the March and April. So I feel like this will get us into a much better place this cycle, and I think also just we've already given staff direction to reach out to project proponents and start on those. I think it was 13 projects, but I think having this policy in place will provide a lot more predictability going forward as well. So I'm glad we're putting this, kind of solidifying this as a good practice. And also just wanted to pass along some Mike, I have shared the rescoring application with the project managers for the two projects in Boston that are going through this process, and the managers thought that this was very doable, well thought out questionnaire. So just kudos to staff for making it as simple as possible within an obviously complex kind of information gathering exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. John Strauss.
Thanks. The question I had was kind of an overall question. Is the thrust of this rescoring process to try to ensure that money is directed to active projects and keep money out of projects that have, I think the word stalled was mentioned. Is that the idea of the whole thing, is just to keep money in projects that are moving forward and getting results?
So the objective of this policy is to provide the MPO board with the information that they need to make that kind of decision based on what the MPO board's priorities are to manage the program. So to be clear, we're just trying to, as staff, make sure that the board has the best information possible to do whatever the board decides to do with the program. We are not trying to put our thumb on the scale as far as what those priorities are, at least with the rescoring. There are other discussions about project design and moving projects forward that are subject to a different policy that will come before this board. I hope that makes sense.
That's a qualified no, John. Jen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, just wanted to draw the connection there between John's question. In my TIP committee report earlier in the meeting, I mentioned that at the next meeting of ours on November 6th, we're going to be discussing the readiness guideline policy. And so that's, I think, the initiative that takes a more direct look at how projects are advancing in their design and how we are able to gather that information and inform our decision making. So would certainly welcome you to join that conversation.
Other questions? So then I just have a quick one. I think this is great work. I'm going to vote yes. The 13 that we're rescoring now, that we voted on whenever that meeting was, where we had a robust discussion and decided we should rescore them. Are each of them, is their previous score more? It's based on, are those the projects that are based on 2 LRTPs ago?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Or they're unscored.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure I understood. And that's also, is that the reason for the the schedule that you said of like, okay, we'll have another 14 or 15 or whatever that will rescore in 2 years. Is that all based on that tying it back to the LRTP, and those projects won't become stale scores for another 2 years because of that issue?
Right. This, as the policy lays out, it's tied to LRTP update cycles.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood. Makes as much sense to me as anything else we do. I think this is great work, Ethan. Any other questions? Seeing none, can we get a motion? Oh wait, Eric, you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to endorse the policy as presented today.
Thank you, Tom Bent.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
Certainly, David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Tyler Tarasi,
Tyler Tarasi, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassi, yes.
Anna Switlikowski,
Anna Swilikowski, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly,
Yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Patrick Hoey,
Patrick Hoey, yes.
Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all very much. And unfortunately, I've been called into another meeting just now. So Eric is going to take the chair. Thank you all very much. And I'll see you in a couple weeks. Thanks, Eric. Bye, guys.
Thank you, David. Okay, so the next agenda item is the Blue Bikes and MBTA Connections study, and I'll pass it to Tanner Bonner, MPO staff.
Thanks, and hi everyone. I'm Tanner Bonner, and I'm a data analyst at the MPO. So I'll be presenting an overview today on the Blue Bikes and MBTA Connections UPWP discrete study, where we've used network and trip data to help understand the connection and synergies between the Blue Bikes and MBTA systems. Our final report for this study is in an interactive story map format. I won't be scrolling through the story map here, so if you haven't yet, I encourage you to take a look at the interactive report and dive a bit deeper into the data. So without further ado, next slide, please. So much of the inspiration from this study came from witnessing the rapid expansion of Blue Bikes over the past few years. The system's been a positive asset to our region. Bike sharing promotes physical activity, can get people to places faster than walking, is relatively inexpensive, and can shift trips away from cars. Another benefit of a bike sharing system is that it can fill in gaps in the transportation network. A widespread and dense bike sharing system can provide people with multiple options to travel and can increase the resiliency of the transportation system as a whole. During transit disruptions, we've seen increases in Blue Bikes ridership and set new records. During the Orange Line shutdown in September 2022, the system saw over 600,000 trips. And the Blue Bike system complements the T during regular service as well. The MPO conducted a survey of Blue Bikes riders in September 2023 and estimated that up to 10% of users' trips connected to or from an MBTA service during that time. Next slide, please. So understanding the connection and the synergies between the Blue Bikes and MBTA systems can support sustainable growth of the Blue Bikes network and improve the travel opportunities and experience for new and existing riders. With existing data sources, we currently don't know precisely how often and where Blue Bikes riders are making connections to MBTA service or using Blue Bikes as an alternative to transit. However, we can start to explore network and trip data to begin understanding where Blue Bikes and the T have the strongest potential to connect and where gaps remain. So in our analysis, we asked two questions. One, how interconnected are the Blue Bikes and MBTA networks? And 2, how are Blue Bikes trips potentially interacting with the MBTA? Next slide, please. In our network analysis, we considered Blue Bike stations and MBTA service nearby if their access points were within a 3-minute walk of each other. Of the stations we analyzed, we found more than 80% of Blue Bike stations are near MBTA bus or rail. In the map shown, we can see a sample of Blue Bike stations near MBTA bus or rail in dark blue, and Blue Bike stations that are not near MBTA bus or rail in light blue. Next slide, please. On the other hand, connectivity from the T differs a bit by mode. Most of the T's rapid transit rail stations have a Blue Bike station nearby, but however, rapid transit rail still has gaps, with 28% of stations not having a Blue Bike station nearby, notably along the Braintree branch of the Red Line, the D and E branches of the Green Line, and the Blue Line. Next slide, please. It's worth noting that some routes are well connected to Blue Bike stations. 11 routes listed here, including 9 bus routes and 2 rapid transit rail routes, have a Blue Bike station near at least 80% of their stops. Next slide, please. But there is still potential to strengthen connections between Blue Bikes and the T where they already exist. Most stops or stations near Blue Bikes only have 1 station nearby. Having multiple Blue Bike stations near high-activity MBTA service can provide riders multiple options and support more capacity for multimodal trip activity. For example, some rapid transit rail stations have more than 3 Blue Bike stations nearby. Next slide, please. So the other major piece of our analysis involved Blue Bike's trip data, given these network connections. Of all trips in 2024, we found almost 4 million trips that occurred near MBTA bus or rail service, and we classified them into one of 4 categories listed here: potential first mile, potential last mile, supplemental efficient, and supplemental less efficient. Next slide, please. So potential first mile trips did not start near transit, but ended near transit, represented in the top diagram, while potential last mile trips started near transit, but did not end near transit, represented in the bottom diagram. Next slide, please. On the other hand, supplemental trips both started and ended near transit. To distinguish supplemental trips, we simulated the travel times for these trips by biking and alternatively by transit. When trips were significantly faster by biking than transit, we classified them as efficient, represented in the top diagram. When trips were similarly as fast or slower by biking than transit, we classified them as less efficient, represented in the bottom diagram. Next slide, please. So across these trip types, we found that overall, supplemental trips were the most common. Efficient trips accounted for about 46% of Blue Bike's trips near transit, compared to 38% for less efficient trips. Potential first and last mile connections accounted for about 8% of trips each. Next slide, please. Looking at potential first and last mile trips, we found that the share of these trips shifted throughout the day. On weekdays, the share of last mile trips was greatest during the AM peak period, while the share of first mile trips was greatest in the PM peak period. This might imply that commuters are more likely to use Blue Bikes to make a connection from an MBTA service to work, rather than an MBTA service to their home location. In other words, riders may more likely use Blue Bikes as the second leg of their to-work journey in the morning, and the first leg of their from-work journey in the afternoon. Next slide, please. In making connections to or from transit, we found that potential first and last mile Blue Bike trips connect most often to MBTA routes that serve downtown Boston and Cambridge. The top 5 rail connections are the Green Line, B, D, and E branches, the Orange Line, and the Red Line. The top 5 bus route connections are the 1, 47, 64, 68, and CT2. Blue Bike's trips potentially connecting to these rail and bus routes account for about 30% of all potential first and last mile connections. Next slide, please. Moving away from potential first and last mile trips and looking at efficient trips that both started and ended near transit, we analyzed a subset of these trips that started and ended along the same route. These efficient supplemental trips more often occurred along bus routes compared to rail routes. The route 1, 4, 8, 47, and 66 bus routes were the most common potential bus substitutions, while for rail, the B, D, and E branches of the Green Line, the Orange Line, and the Red Line were the most common potential substitutions. And although we analyzed simulated travel time differences, many factors beyond travel time differences can influence whether users decide to take transit or use blue bikes. Bus crowding could be one of these factors. Though only about a fifth of MBTA bus routes overall had crowding levels above the target standard as of fall 2023, 4 of these 5 bus routes did. Next slide, please. Putting this trip activity into a larger context, we should recognize that the presence of high comfort bikeways that provide physical separation for motor vehicles can help riders feel more comfortable and safe, and can strongly influence bike trip activity on a regional scale. In our analysis, we found most trip activity tended to be near the growing networks of high comfort bikeways between portions of Boston and Cambridge, shown in the map here. Next slide, please. On the other hand, the blue bike stations that serve the least potential first or last mile trips are largely separated from high comfort bikeways throughout other portions of Boston and other municipalities. While other factors like land use and population density can influence how often people choose to bike throughout the region, safe and comfortable conditions are critical in encouraging multimodal transportation. Next slide, please. As the Blue Bike network continues to grow, we should consider how we can establish more connections between blue bikes and the T and facilitate travel by bike and transit together. The proximity of transit service can be considered during station siting, as well as the potential to increase users' ability to access transit stops for areas not near transit. Station siting should also consider sufficient station density and spread to maximize access to the bike sharing network while affording users multiple options to make their trips. Additionally, 4 primary components can influence where stations are sited to optimize bike sharing benefits. These are feasibility, demand, equity, and public input. Other system improvements beyond bike share station siting can strengthen a complementary relationship between bike share and transit. Transit and bike share systems can coordinate on fare payment systems, navigation applications, and wayfinding. Next slide, please. Moving forward to fill in these gaps, the MPO could serve to provide technical assistance to municipalities seeking to expand their Blue Bikes networks and support strategic collaboration across communities and agencies. The MPO has recently supported the city of Quincy with analysis to identify potential Blue Bikes locations, guided by the station siting research that I highlighted. Furthermore, additional data collection could provide more insight into trip-making behavior and identify other growth opportunities. From this study's analysis, we do not know the true starts and ends of Blue Bikes users' trips, nor do we know where and when Blue Bikes users are actually connecting with MBTA service. And lastly, the MPO could also research models to project future demand and revenue for both biking and transit from Blue Bike station expansions. And that's my presentation. Thanks for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll pass it back to the chair.
Thanks, Tanner. Any questions? And Tanner, I know there was a request to drop the link. There it is. Jen did that. Okay. Great. Len.
That way it is. Because it's great work. Is there any way, any of us can get our hands on either the data that you analyzed or a subset of it or even a greater set of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, we're working through documenting thoroughly all of the analysis that we did and making either all of it or at least portions of it in the data public. So that is to come.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There is some data that's published on the Blue Bikes website. I think it has origin and destination data that is publicly available on the website as well, if you're ever interested in looking at that. And they do some analysis too of that. I can try to put some of those links into the chat.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Caitlin.
Great, thank you. I know we're relatively new into this conversation, but just to ask a clarifying question around blue bikes and the geography of where they are placed, has there been any consideration of looking at the placement of blue bikes in suburban towns more further out, for example, with town centers, and then at the commuter rail stops as well, to see if that would induce folks either living close to the center or using the commuter rail to use them for first and last miles? And would you clarify for me, just my own information, how far out, or what is the map for placement of blue bikes, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so for this analysis, we hope in the story map, we did do an analysis on commuter rail stations to highlight commuter rail stations that are or not near blue bikes. And we hope that data could be a starting point for some of those conversations. We haven't been as involved as, per se, MAPC and blue bike station siting in coordination with municipalities, so I might direct more to them for some of that conversation. But I think definitely interested in analysis and considering how we could get blue bike stations near those commuter rail stops. And for this analysis, we considered about a 250-meter walk shed for the region overall, but that could, of course, differ for a one-off basis, for example.
I just put in the chat the map from the website. There's 13 municipalities right now that are part of the Blue Bikes system. Boston, Cambridge, Brookline, Somerville, Everett, Newton, Watertown, Arlington, Medford, Malden, Chelsea, Lynn, Salem. I might be missing some. There's a lot of planning that happens, a lot of coordination between the operator, which uses a lot of its own planning based on the systems they're running, like in New York and DC and Chicago and across the country, and also the municipalities. Obviously, just like transit, like density has a huge factor. Proximity to transit is a key component. Ridership is obviously, higher, in the denser areas, and then drops off quite dramatically as we go, further outside. But I think with e-bikes and the introduction of more e-bikes into the system, there is more of this potential to travel longer distances and connect to transit more. So I think this is a really great body of work and a lot of really cool opportunities for further discussion, and kind of looking forward to discussing this at the UPWP table. I will pass it to John Strauss.
Thank you very much. I just had a fast question on the blue bikes overall theory. So it looks like now the stations are near the MBTA, and I guess they're near office buildings. It looks like people are using them for the last bit of commuting that they're doing. If you do put something out in the suburbs, out here in Burlington, we used to have a blue bike station by the 350 MBTA stop by Wegmans. And then after a while, it got yanked. Because I think the issue out in the suburbs is if you take a blue bike out of the rack, there's no place to return it once it gets spread out if you take it home or you take it someplace else in the suburbs. Whereas if it's downtown, you take it from the T and then you drop it off near an office building or near a place where people can get to it and take it back to the T. Is that when you take a bike out, are you just renting it for that amount of time? And if somebody wanted to take it home and then do different errands and stuff with it, is there a way to, get more use out of a blue bike when it's out in the suburbs?
So the pricing structure does include like an initial fee, and then after a period of time, there's like a clock that ticks and you start to incur more fees. So for like a regular non-electric pedal bike, the first 30 minutes are included, and then after that, it starts to go up. There are some different membership levels where that won't happen. For an electric bike, the clock starts ticking like right away. So to your point though, having a density of stations is really critical. If the stations are too spread out, bike share doesn't really work. Also because if you show up and there's no bikes, that's no good. Or if you show up and there's nowhere to park your bike, like all the docks are filled, that's not good. So you really do need a density of stations around each other for it to work. And so that's why expanding out into the suburbs, we do look for kind of dense areas and also a number of stations all at once, like not just one, but we like looking for, something like 4 or 5 stations in relatively close proximity to each other.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Sandy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank Tanner and other members of MPO staff for this excellent work. As many of you may remember from our presentation on our planning efforts at the T back in July, we've been thinking a lot about integration with other mobility services such as Blue Bikes, and we love staff's kind of very rigorous data analysis. We think this data set and other things that are available are going to really help us in thinking through trying to link transit and Blue Bikes better. And thank you for being excellent partners and communicative throughout the process, and looking forward to continuing to work on this topic in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. Jen Rao.
Thank you. And yeah, echoing Sandy's thoughts, excellent work. I love both like the analysis, the story map. It's been kind of fun seeing it picked up by sources like Reddit, where like, and starting some like interesting conversations that sort of take this body of work outside just the transportation nerds like myself, who typically are engaged in it. So thank you for kind of taking that extra step and making it really publicly accessible. I love one piece of this is sort of like builds on a framing that in Boston we've always employed of like bike share really as public transit by bike. I think people, especially in the beginning years of bike share in Boston, didn't know really what it was. And I think that's still true, like as the system expands in the region, like some of the outlying municipalities that haven't had as much experience with it, it operates differently than just like having a bike that you own and have to take with you throughout your journey or find a way to lock up. It's a very different model. And folks don't necessarily recognize always that it's a public good, it's a public investment, it's owned and governed by the local municipal governments. And I think that's not always the case in different cities and regions, and it's really special that in Boston we treat it that way and invest in it. And I think this research also shows that it's not just this like parallel public transit system, but it's really integrated. It's supplementing, it's expanding the public transit options that people have available to them. I think the sort of question I have is both sort of a question and I don't know, maybe a suggestion for further conversation, which I know has come up here and there in the past. But one of the things that's kind of confused me for a long time is that right now as we expand stations and put them on T property, we're charged, I think it's $1,200 a year to like have that space. And it's and I get that there was a period of time where we had other types of bike share operators that weren't municipally or kind of owned and managed by the government, but Blue Bikes is different in that way. And I know that this, in Boston, we're able to kind of make this work, but I know especially as we try to expand outward, that sort of ongoing fee for our operator kind of does shape where we put stations. And if we're trying to build this system to be integrated in this way, the municipalities don't charge the T for use of our, the roadways that we own, the sidewalks we own, so bus stops. So it just seems like we need to, have more of these conversations about how are we kind of mutually supporting each other, and where can we make sure that that we're kind of aligning as much as we can and shifting into this multimodal future. incentivizing it properly. And I guess, so I think maybe my question here is like, is that something that in your course of research, like I know this wasn't as much a literature review of other places and how they've integrated, but more looking at the Boston system, but have you seen other places where what type of agreements there are? And if not, like, is that something that maybe we could look into?
Yeah, great question. And speaking with some municipalities, that is something we heard from them as well, and something that we mentioned in our literature review document. But we're yet to do like a really thorough investigation of like how those like agreements have been made in other systems. So I think that's definitely a really interesting and important point for some future coordination and research.
And I'll just add, there's some good news, Jen, Matt Warfield, who used to work for the city of Boston, is now at the MBTA. And I think his title has something to do about first and last mile. It's sort of Sandy, what is his title?
I believe his title is Deputy Director of Active Transportation and
Yes.
First and Last Mile, something along those lines. The person who some of you may know who was previously in that position is Pete Roby. So Matt has taken that position, and we're really excited to have him on board. He's a great contact for everything Blue Bikes.
And MAPC has helped the municipalities have some conversations with Matt, and Matt's working on this to try to create a policy that's fair. So I think there's some good movement. But CDBS staff, yeah, any research into how other regions coordinate, that's another great topic of research on this. So I will call on Will Palmer.
I'll be very brief. First of all, thank you so much. This was an awesome presentation. Second, as a piece of knowledge share, I thought I would mention in Providence, there is a micromobility program that includes e-scooters. One of the differences with Blue Bikes is that you can leave your scooter basically anywhere as long as it doesn't impede a pedestrian pathway. In practice, that is not carefully observed, but that I think does, at least anecdotally, I know people who have used it for the first mile and last mile need there. So for people's awareness. A separate question is, you alluded to this a little bit earlier about the use of Blue Bikes versus transit journeys. And I guess I was wondering, did you see any data that would point to particular areas where transit is insufficient or would need improvement, that people are using the Blue Bikes instead of effective transit? I noticed, for example, the 4 bus you mentioned is being used a lot. And I assume that that's because the 4 doesn't run as often and there isn't great connectivity between North Station and the Seaport. I don't want to assume that on your behalf, but I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, so the analysis I presented is pretty much as far as we went into that regard. I think also comparing that to some of the bus crowding data, finding that 4 of those 5 bus routes are not meeting the target standard as of fall 2023. I think that was an interesting finding there, but I think there's definitely some more research that can be done. But I would say that pretty much the route analysis there, those 5 routes we presented, is the extent at which we looked at this, but there's definitely more that we could do.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Okay. Great. Any other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you, Tanner. That was great. And let's move on to the next agenda item, which is decarbonizing the freight sector, exploring the potential for using cargo e-bikes for first and last mile freight deliveries. And we'll pass it to Shravanti.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shravanti Gopalan Narayanan. I'm the Freight Planning Program Manager with the MPO's Multimodal Planning and Design team. I'm here today with my colleague Kyle Casiglio, our Senior Active Mobility Planner, to share the research findings and recommendations from our Unified Planning Work Program UPWP study, exploring the potential for using cargo e-bikes for last mile freight deliveries. Next slide, please. So this study builds on our ongoing freight decarbonization research and last year's UPWP discrete study on decarbonization strategies in the freight and logistics sector, which identified cargo bikes as a recommended area for future research. The study also draws on related work in the space, including the City of Boston's cargo e-bike delivery pilot program, Boston Delivers, and Biking the Goods by University of Washington's Urban Freight Lab. This project idea was selected as a discrete study from the UPWP universe of proposed ideas for federal fiscal year 2025. Next slide, please. Cargo e-bikes are heavy-duty electric bicycles built to carry larger loads with the help of an electric motor. Standard models can handle small to medium parcels, while heavy-duty models with trailers can move much bulkier items. Cargo bikes can support freight mode shift, especially for short and last-mile deliveries. They come in different designs and configurations to meet specific operational needs. In the collage in this slide, you'll see examples of cargo bike models such as Dutch box bike with a trailer, a cargo trike, a standard Dutch box bike, and a three-wheeled e-strike. Next slide, please. For this study, we used three main research methods. First, we conducted a literature review looking at existing research on cargo bikes, including their use cases, benefits, challenges, and the regulatory framework. We also looked at the role of microhubs in last mile logistics. Second, we analyzed three international case studies from London, Berlin, and Bogota to see how they've implemented cargo e-bike programs and to learn from their experience with cargo e-bikes. And third, we interviewed cargo bike experts across the US and from Canada, including stakeholders from public agency staff, operators, vendors, and researchers to understand opportunities and challenges for cargo bike adoption and to capture lessons learned from their on-the-ground experience. So together, these methods gave us insights into operational challenges, infrastructure and policy needs, lessons from other programs. Based on this, we developed findings, recommendations, and best practices for adopting cargo e-bikes and establishing microhubs. We've also created a checklist of key considerations for different stages of planning a pilot program, which Kyle will share towards the end of today's presentation. Next slide, please. So this slide gives a geographic overview of our research methodologies, highlighting the cities where we focused our research through literature review, case studies, and stakeholder interviews across the US, as well as select cities from Europe and South America. Next slide. From our literature review, we identified several key insights. First, applications. Cargo bikes are being used for grocery and food delivery, e-commerce, and in some cases for municipal services like mail delivery and waste collection. Second, microhubs. Microhubs are staging facilities where trucks drop off packages that are then sorted and consolidated for efficient dispatch to their final destinations using cargo bikes. Could you maybe click on each item to thank you. One more. And third, benefits. Beyond reducing emissions and congestion, cargo bikes are compact, they need less curb space, allow faster deliveries, and help reduce double parking and overall vehicle mile travel for last mile deliveries. And finally, challenges. The literature highlights some challenges like limited carrying capacity of certain models, lack of supportive bike infrastructure for operations that can impact rider safety, battery range, and safety issues related to batteries, and weather-related impacts on operations. Next slide. So building on the background research, we examined three case studies. Starting with the City of London, the city developed a network of bicycle superhighways connecting the inner core to outer boroughs and strengthened cycling infrastructure across the city. Cargo bikes were integrated into the transportation system and were promoted as part of a sustainable freight strategy, providing a foundation for their adoption. London has tested different micro-hub configurations, demonstrating that success involves not just mode shift, but also shifting mindsets around how goods move. In Berlin, private sector innovation combined with government support to expand cargo e-bike sharing and rentals. Flexible regulation and targeted subsidies encouraged adoption, while investments in microhubs and smart logistic tools integrated cargo e-bikes into last-mile delivery. Berlin's approach highlights the importance of coordinating infrastructure, policy, and financial incentives to encourage scalable urban freight solutions. Finally, Bogota leveraged a long-standing cycling culture to support cargo bike adoption, starting with cyclovia events and citywide campaigns. Government incentives and the Bicarca pilot program further encouraged private sector experimentation and adoption of cargo e-bikes. The city's less restrictive regulatory environment allowed operators to adapt quickly, relying on dense mixed-use streets and informal consolidation points rather than formal micro-hubs. This approach highlights how supportive policies, cultural shifts, and adaptability to urban form can enable freight mode shifts without extensive infrastructure. Next slide, please. From interviews, we identified 5 major themes. Starting with pilot implementation challenges, common hurdles included site selection, high land cost, and unclear procurement processes for microhubs. Some interviewees also noted that rushed timelines made internal coordination and partnership building difficult, sometimes leaving pilot programs without a reliable anchor client. They shared that pilots were valuable learning tools, helping to test microhub models, partnerships, and regulations. On the policy regulation side, interviewees shared that policies and zoning regulations have a huge impact on cargo bike adoption. They emphasized regulatory flexibility, prioritizing learning over enforcement, and recommended introducing incremental policies as the program matures. Operational barriers. Next one. Thank you. Operational barriers came up frequently in our conversations as well. Infrastructure gaps were a major limitation, especially the lack of staging and loading, unloading areas and secure storage for cargo bikes. Other challenges included battery performance in inclement weather, wear and tear, and high repair and insurance cost. Next one. So looking at a bigger picture, cargo bikes are seen as a key tool for shifting last mile freight deliveries from step vans and trucks. But long-term adoption involves rethinking logistic systems, building microhub networks, and integrating smart tools for efficient trip planning. And finally, interviewees emphasized people-first freight solutions. They pointed to inclusive programs and rebates as important tools to encourage cargo bike adoption, especially among small businesses and economically disadvantaged users. They also highlighted creating opportunities for hands-on experiences like vehicle demo events for new interested or potential riders to try out cargo bikes. With that, I'll now pass it over to Kyle to continue with our key takeaways and rest of the presentation. Kyle, we can't hear you yet.
So sorry. So thank you, Shravanti. After all of this research, what are the lessons that we're really taking away from this study? The first is how critical microhubs are to cargo bike-based logistics. Locating them isn't easy and different priorities have to be considered. They need to be both accessible to trucks as well as in areas that are safe for bicycle operations and dense enough to support economical bike-based delivery. So it's really kind of a Goldilocks zone. These areas need to also have the proper zoning, as logistics are typically considered an industrial use rather than commercial, which limits the amount of land that is appropriately zoned for them, especially in areas with high population density where cargo bikes might make the most sense. It's also important to remember that the needs for a microhub are more than just a space to load and unload packages. If this is a permanent base of operations, things like restrooms, secure storage for the bikes, employee lockers, all that needs to be taken into consideration. Given the difficulty in acquiring appropriately zoned, sized, and located property, many of the initiatives that we looked at had government involvement in establishing the microhub. The advantage of this was access to municipally owned land and the ability of the city to require that multiple carriers be allowed to use the facility. This helps both provide access to smaller carriers, of which there are many trying to claim this niche of the delivery market, as well as to minimize the amount of redundant hubs in the same area by larger carriers who are in fierce competition with each other. Now, these types of hubs that I've been talking about are what we would call a permanent micro hub. They're brick and mortar locations, they have an address. But there's another model that we want to call out and has many of its own advantages, which are the mobile micro hubs. These can be set up in a curbside loading zone. They might involve a trailer being located there to house packages about to go out or to secure bikes. Sometimes it's simply a space set aside for companies to reserve a time to use it for transfers between trucks, vans, or bikes, similar to the smart loading zone policies that we've covered in other studies. The advantage of these is the low barrier to entry in setting one up. However, it comes with all the disadvantages of not being in a building. So you have exposure to the elements and a lack of facilities for the operators. Next slide, please. So there's plenty to consider outside of the microhubs as well. It's important for any municipality looking to encourage cargo e-bike based delivery to think about what the business use case or cases are that they're trying to encourage, because the needs of, say, app-based food delivery independent contractors are very different from those of large legacy parcel delivery companies. What all of them will need, though, and what no effort to encourage cargo e-bike delivery will be successful without, is a robust bicycle network. So this means having connectivity and preventing obstruction. As the bike network has grown over the decades, it's doubled as a support system for the freight network. While they make up just a fraction of vehicles on the road, delivery vehicles account for roughly 2/3 of minutes spent obstructing the bike lane. And this renders the network unsafe. And in fact, people doing bike-based delivery are more likely to be injured due to an obstructed lane than regular users are. So to make cargo e-bike logistics work, this dynamic needs to be flipped on its head, with bike lanes seen as a vital part of the freight network. And consideration when planning and building out these networks, we need to think whether some of the areas that we traditionally haven't considered for bicycle facilities, because they're more industrial in character, actually might have facility needs to make sure people can operate safely. Fortunately, we have identified a suite of freight-friendly interventions that can help keep bike lanes clear through better design, enforcement, and policy strategies, which you can find in last year's Parking and Bike Lane study. I'd also like to highlight a recent report by the Shared Spaces Coalition that identifies many excellent recommendations as well. Another aspect of safety that we often came across during this study is battery safety and regulations. You might be familiar with some of the high-profile incidents of e-bike battery fires that have been in the news over the past couple of years. This is primarily a concern when we're talking about independent contractor gig app style delivery, because these people are supplying their own bike and their own battery, and many of them turn to the cheapest option available that many times don't meet the industry standards that more expensive bikes typically do. In this case, it's important that the state continue to work on ensuring all batteries sold or shipped into Massachusetts meet rigorous safety standards, such as UL standards. Finally, cargo e-bikes present novel questions about micromobility and how shared spaces are treated. A fully loaded cargo e-bike can weigh hundreds of pounds and move at speeds of 20 miles per hour. There's no universally accepted definition of what a cargo bike is in the US. Some municipalities across the country have attempted to define them based on weight or wheel count or dimensions. Defining them is important in order to differentiate them from a regular bike or e-bike in terms of how they're regulated, what types of facilities they can use. Next slide, please. And here in Massachusetts, that's the position we are presently in. There is no distinction between a cargo e-bike and a regular e-bike. These are considered class 1 or class 2, depending on the nature of their pedal assist and or their throttle. And they can go anywhere that bikes are allowed and must follow the same rules. Also of note, as only 2 or 3-wheeled vehicles qualify under this definition in Massachusetts, that means that current policy would prohibit the 4-wheeled type of cargo e-bikes that are popular with some carriers. Next slide, please. So in summary, there are a number of recommendations we can make in this report on how municipalities can launch a cargo e-bike logistics program and generally make their cities and towns more friendly for business adoption of cargo e-bikes. Some of the highlights: ensuring that your land use and curb management policies allow for appropriate micro-hub siting and cargo bike loading and unloading. Building out a robust and safe active transportation network is definitely critical for making sure operators can actually move around the built environment safely. Businesses can also be incentivized to subscribe to cargo e-bike delivery, or on the flip side, grants to small and independent operators can help close the barrier to entry for those interested in getting started or in switching modes. Finally, strong partnerships are essential for success. It's important that all players involved, including municipal staff, the operators, logistics firms, local businesses, are all at the table prior to launching a program. Understanding customer needs and having them on board before you get started can save a lot of time and headaches during the launch period. As Shravanti mentioned before, not having an anchor client before you get started can really put you behind the 8 ball before you've even launched the program. Next slide, please. So to help support municipalities interested in piloting cargo e-bike programs, we've developed a checklist to help ensure that municipalities are taking all the necessary considerations. What you see here on the screen are just a couple of examples pulled from it, and it can be found as an appendix to the report on our website. We'd also like to mention that municipalities that are interested in exploring a pilot program can reach out for support through our Community Transportation Technical Assistance Program at the MPO website. Next slide, please. So that concludes our presentation. We're happy to take any comments or questions, and feel free to reach out to either of us if you're interested in discussing the study further. At this time, I'll turn it back to the chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kyle and Shravanti. Any questions? Okay. Let's see. Oh, Tom Bent.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this report. I just one question. In any of these other cities and cities or states, is there any insurance requirements for operating a e-cargo bike? You know, you mentioned they can go up to 20 miles an hour, be well over 100 pounds. And just wondering, you know, is insurance part of that? Because, you know, in an accident, you know, it could be serious, and I'm just wondering what other states are doing with that.
Thank you, Tom, for that great question. And Kyle, feel free to add. I can maybe get us just started. So insurance was one of the items that was mentioned as a gap in our method. So especially during our stakeholder interviews, insurance was highlighted as one of the gaps in the cargo bike pilot programs. So there was definitely some concerns around like insurance environment in the US for repairs for e-bikes, and also it's quite expensive to pay for insurance to do all the work related to repairs of cargo bikes. So as such, it was mentioned as one of the gaps, and it's probably an area where we need to do more, you know, research and see if there's better ways to address this as an issue. Kyle, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that.
No, thank you, Shravanti. like she said, we did not encounter in the literature review or in any of the case studies examples of municipalities requiring liability insurance. However, I would like to call out a few of the regulations that New York City in particular has implemented recently to try and address this, because it is absolutely a concern trying to share facilities between a 300-pound loaded cargo bike with trailer and a, I don't know, mom and her kid trying to get to school. Things like a speed limit that is governed as part of a registration process is something that they recently adopted in, I want to say it was fall of 2024, alongside their dimensional requirements for the e-bike. Registration, I think, was the biggest safety control that they've added. Being able to identify people who are, doing this professionally and being able to then regulate them that way. Having a history of the behavior of the driver. If you get a citation, it's attached to your record, that type of thing. We did not encounter any insurance requirements, though.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Not seeing any. Let's move on, I think, to our next agenda item, which is the quarterly engagement dashboard update and annual evaluation. Stella Jordan.
Thank you. I am actually going to get us kicked off today, but special shout out to Stella for her second to last day with the MPO. Thank you for your work. So I am here today with Stella Jordan, Gia Hong, and myself, Erin McGuire, to talk about content that we have seen from our engagement efforts in the last entire federal fiscal year. If we could go on to the next slide, please. To provide some background about this data and the discussion at large, about a year ago, we as staff had developed a new process for analyzing, visualizing, and reporting out on data that we've collected through ongoing public engagement efforts. This includes data about who we have reached and the distribution of engagement along with input throughout the region, themes that we have heard, priorities that are coming from specific municipalities, along with changes over time in terms of what we're hearing and what we're reaching. These updates are intended to more effectively and intentionally connect public input to our many planning outcomes, particularly in the context of the development of our next long-range plan, which is why I am here today, but also throughout the many other documents and programs and plans that we have actively going on. We want to make sure that you as decision makers have a solid picture of what MPO staff are hearing from people throughout the region about their transportation concerns, their needs, and their priorities. And we hope that having a qualitative analysis can complement some of the more quantitative data that you've already been exposed to help assess needs and inform, again, many of our different planning decisions. Next slide, please. On that note, and especially as the development of a handful of our certification documents does lie ahead of us in coming months, we have a couple of questions that are related to the engagement data for you to consider as we go throughout this presentation. These are the same questions that we've presented you with in the past, and we're hoping to just keep those thoughts running through your head. So this includes, how can engagement data be applied to our MPO decision making? How can we close the loop after decisions have been made to illustrate the impacts of public input? And then what other pieces of data and analysis would be helpful for you guys to help communicate all of this? Next slide. As in our last update, we're using an online interactive engagement dashboard to analyze and visualize this data. Stella had sent a link to the dashboard in the chat, and there's also a link on today's meeting calendar. We are using this opportunity to also provide a review of engagement throughout the last federal fiscal year, FFY 2025. And this will be a broader annual evaluation of the effectiveness and reach of our engagement efforts. And we hope that the value that this dashboard provides is one where you can look at the data for engagement in one unified place, and you can consider both broad annual retrospective analyses and also changes over time. And with that, I will pass it over to Stella Jordan.
Thanks so much, Erin. Thank you all. We can go on to the next slide. And the next one, please. I'll kick us off with some of that FFY 2025 data. So this slide represents an overview of who we reached throughout the region in FFY 2025, throughout all of our engagement efforts and the input we received. Through our engagement practice, just as some context, we aim to deploy varied methods and always cast a wide net in our efforts to reach a diverse range of people throughout the region. A central principle of our engagement work, as I know many of you have heard from me in the past, is to meaningfully engage communities whose perspectives are not currently well represented in the planning process. In most cases, these are communities who have been disproportionately impacted by planning outcomes, and those who face historical or ongoing barriers to engagement we do not typically hear as much from. So in working towards that goal, we tend to spend more effort on targeted engagement, and this typically involves more active and intensive engagement methods. Effective and meaningful engagement often means building trust by being physically present in the communities and building relationships with community organizations. This is why I'll talk a lot about active and in-person engagement today, and just kind of contrast this a little bit to more passive forms of engagement like digital surveys, which I'll also discuss more in a bit. Next slide, please. So to outline the full suite of methods a little bit more, we deploy a variety of strategies which are determined by the purpose and goals of the engagement we're conducting and the target audiences. These methods include attending in-person events throughout the region, and particularly prioritizing those events that take place in communities we know we don't typically hear from as much. Also hosting meetings, focus groups, and workshops, both in-person and virtual, attending virtual community meetings and events held by community-based organizations, advocates, and other agency partners, conducting surveys and deploying other interactive digital engagement tools, and of course, robust communications to publicize opportunities to engage across all of our digital communication channels, including email, LinkedIn, and social media. So we collect input from across all of these activities, and we also receive input via email and MPO comment form submissions as well. All of this input is tracked, coded, and imported into the dashboard. So the analyses that we'll be discussing today relate to what we heard from public input, really represent the aggregation of input from all of these sources. Next slide, please. We continued to prioritize attending in-person events in FFY 2025. And this kind of contrasts to how we did in previous years as well across these different categories of events. So we saw a slight increase over previous years this past year in the number of events we attended throughout the year in person. Most of these were community events hosted by community or civic groups or municipalities, where we went and tabled and conducted a variety of interactive activities to solicit input and also just to share more information about our work. We also focused on continuing to build and deepen relationships, particularly via small group meetings. Most of these were with community and advocacy organizations and other stakeholders, mostly on the subject of how the MPO can effectively engage different communities and constituencies. So helping us build up our strategic planning as well. And we apply these learnings from all of these meetings and events to our ongoing planning, really to ensure that we're responding to community preferences and consistently improving our effectiveness. Next slide, please. So I'll talk a little bit more about what we heard, but going back to who we reached for a moment, as we tried to prioritize our engagement efforts in communities we know we don't typically hear from as much, or those who have been historically facing barriers to engagement, had a harder time engaging with the planning process, we want to show a few breakdowns on the next few slides of where we attended and held in-person events in particular in relation to these priority communities. And again, based on our data and our experience from previous years, we were able to more effectively engage these communities via in-person methods, and especially by going into the communities themselves versus digital engagement or more traditional engagement methods like hosting a meeting and asking folks to come to us. So that's why we're kind of contrasting the attendance at in-person events here. First, for communities that speak other languages, this map depicts the percentage of people with limited English proficiency by census tract throughout our region. We were successful in reaching some of these communities where the limited English proficiency population is most dense, but of course there are still several gaps, particularly in the southern and southwestern part of our region. We also know by experience that it isn't enough to just offer translated materials at events or send out translated versions of a survey on our normal comms channels. Really, to effectively reach these limited English proficiency communities, we need to build and leverage relationships with community partners. And just a couple of examples, we've had success reaching people with limited English proficiency this year by attending multilingual events hosted by community-based organizations and by using interpreters who are known within the community that we're going to at our own events. However, we also know by observation that it's an increasingly challenging climate to engage with limited English proficiency communities right now. So I also just want to mention that we are remaining vigilant and aware of those broader political forces when we go out and try to engage with folks as well. If we go on to the next slide, this map shows where we attended events in relation to lower income communities in our region. Low income for the MPO is defined as households that are at or above 200% of the federal poverty line. And the map illustrates the percentage of these households by census tract. So again, we did reach many of these communities via in-person activities, but there are definitely still notable gaps. In this case, particularly at the outer edges of our region and in the North Shore. Next slide, please. This map finally shows where we attended in-person events in relation to communities of color in our region, again illustrated by percentage of people who identify as a race or ethnicity other than white by census tract. As with the previous maps, we have strong overlap between where we focused our in-person engagement activities and where there are higher proportions of these priority communities, particularly in the inner core, which generally is where we see higher concentrations of equity populations relative to the rest of our region. But we certainly do have gaps in our engagement beyond the inner core as well. And Gia will talk a little bit more later in the presentation about how we plan to address those gaps. But if we go on to the next slide, we've talked about in-person events, and I want to quickly contrast that to what I earlier called more passive engagement methods like traditional public meetings and digital surveys. We know from experience that we don't reach a very diverse or representative audience with these methods. And this is something that we actually do see across the planning field as well. This chart represents demographic responses from all surveys conducted in FFY25 in comparison to regional average demographics as a percent of regional population and to previous federal fiscal years. So we slowly crept towards the regional average in the past few years across several categories with a notable drop in FFY25. I want to contextualize this drop with a few things. So first, 3 out of the 5 surveys conducted in FFY25 were for quarter or municipality-specific studies, some in areas that had very different demographics than the regional average. Second, the need to deploy digital surveys ebbs and flows each year depending on the type and context of the projects that we are working on. So some years, for example, we conduct more robust and targeted region-wide surveys to support large efforts like the LRTP. Other years, fewer of those things. So in FFY25, instead of conducting a region-wide LRTP survey, we launched several new interactive engagement activities on the LRTP webpage, which effectively allow us to collect survey-style response data through a more engaging platform. Finally, the strides we made in previous years were the result of very intentional efforts to target our survey distribution to a wider and more diverse audience via partnerships with community-based organizations and surveying live during meetings or events. These are resource-intensive methods, and with limited capacity, we decided this year to prioritize more active methods at the outset. So rather than conducting more engagement around traditional surveys, we're focusing on conducting more engagement via the methods we know are actually more effective in meaningfully engaging priority communities in the first place, like, as I said, attending in-person events and building relationships with community leaders. This pays off in the long run, but doesn't translate as well into quantifiable data, particularly around demographics. We don't ask everyone we engage at events for their demographic information. So unfortunately, survey responses are one of our few current means of assessing who are reaching from that angle in an accurate way. And the maps I discussed earlier that overlay in-person events on the demographic distribution of various populations throughout our region are kind of another attempt to like informally assess this as well. And if we go on to the next slide, another way that we've been looking at kind of informally or by proxy assessing the demographics of who we reached is by drawing a 1 mile radius around the points at which we held events, assuming most people attending community events are coming from nearby in the neighborhood, and looking at the demographic data within the census tracts that fall within that radius. So this table shows how the demographics in these event sheds, as we're calling them, compare to the regional average, giving us a better sense of how effectively we were able to target our more active in-person engagement to priority communities. The events where the percentage of the populations of people with low income, limited English proficiency, and people of color in our event sheds were higher than the regional average are highlighted in blue in this table. So seeing that the majority of our in-person events listed here effectively targeted equity communities through this lens. The more of this type of targeted engagement that we're able to do, the more that we hope to start seeing that the input we collect reflects the needs and priorities of these communities directly. Next slide, please. We also track the reach of our communications, which help us solicit input and drive participation. In FFY25, our email communications via MPO mailing lists dialed in greater impact and engagement with our content. Data shows that we sent fewer total emails than in previous years, but we had more emails opened than in previous years. And if we go on to the next slide, we also saw great engagement with our communications on LinkedIn. Engagement there has continued to grow as we've put more resources into cultivating our presence on the platform. And LinkedIn has become our most important social channel for reaching stakeholders in the planning field, and increasingly of value for connecting with professional advocates as well. We gained more than 400 new followers on LinkedIn in FFY25, which was a 48% increase. We achieved nearly 44,000 impressions in FFY25, which was a 38% increase from the previous FFY. And that was driven largely by a campaign we deployed in May, highlighting our active transportation work. That campaign alone garnered over 5,000 impressions and 400 interactions. Our engagement rate on LinkedIn more than doubled from 7% in September 2024 to 16% in September 2025, indicating that on average, our followers are finding our content interesting and relevant, and building our presence on LinkedIn really helps us drive deeper engagement with our work from the technical side, and also helps bolster the MPO's reputation as we expand our network. Next slide, please. So now to pivot away from who we reached and how we reached them, I'll talk a little bit more about what we heard from public input in FFY25. Again, the data I'll be discussing is an aggregation of all of the input received across all engagement activities and channels throughout the year. This chart shows that all comments, including both those that have a location associated with them, either because we collected them at a specific event or because they are referencing a specific location, as well as comments that do not have any location associated with them, which this represents over 1,000 total comments, coded by relationship to existing LRTP goal areas. And next slide, this chart also shows the same, but only for comments that have a location associated with them, total number 324 by goal area. Thematically, safety was by far the most prevalent theme we heard this year via our more active engagement efforts, followed by access and connectivity. You can visit the engagement dashboard to look at the individual comments and see breakdowns by theme as well as geography. Essentially, most of our input was focused around improving safety for vulnerable road users in particular, building support across all users for safety interventions, and improving safe and equitable access and connectivity for across all modes. There are a lot of overlaps across these theme categories as well. And many of the comments we receive are driven by the specific efforts that we're engaging about and the questions that we're asking. And just for context, in FFY25, we did do a lot of engagement around safety and also around long-term priorities for improving the region's transportation system. So that drove some of these comments as well. Next slide, please. We also looked at how themes and input broke down across municipalities in our region. Many municipalities had several prevalent themes emerging comments. while some were more focused on specific areas of concern. Again, here you can look more closely at this data within the dashboard itself, and I encourage everyone to spend some time poking around there. You can also sort comments by municipality for more detail on that platform. You can also look at these themes in comment responses in relation to our demographic data, but this doesn't necessarily tell you very much about what certain communities or populations are saying, only what is being said about these communities. And I just want to highlight that this is an element of our analysis that we do hope to improve in the future. And Gia will talk more about that in a moment as well. Next slide, please. So we've been looking at data for all of FFY 2025 as part of our annual retrospective evaluation, but I do want to quickly highlight the data we collected in Q4 of FFY 25 specifically, as this is new content for all of you since our last quarterly engagement update that we delivered. So in Q4, the most prevalent theme was safety across municipalities both in and outside of the inner core. Next slide, please. We had fewer overall comments than previous quarters, as direct engagement for projects typically ebbs a bit towards the end of the FFY, but we did conduct a lot of safety-focused engagement around the Vision Zero action plan over the past few months, which accounts for the prevalence of safety as a theme in these comments. Next slide, please. And before I hand it over to Gia to summarize the gaps we encountered in FFY 25 engagement and discuss our plans for the coming year, I want to briefly highlight a few key accomplishments from FFY 2025. While many gaps do exist, I think one engagement initiative that really exemplifies our commitment to prioritizing and elevating perspectives of communities that we're not currently hearing from is the launch of the new Community Advisory Council. The Advisory Council's mission is to bring new, diverse, and underrepresented perspectives throughout our region into the planning process and really to empower more community voices to help shape and inform our work. We have a really excellent new cohort of members that bring a really wide range of perspectives to do that. And shout out again to our newly elected chair, Transit Matters, and vice chair, Mystic River Watershed Association, Caitlin and Carl, who are here representing the Advisory Council today. I am so excited to see what this group is able to accomplish in the coming years. Another key accomplishment is the engagement that we conducted throughout the development of the Vision Zero action plan. That safety is such a prevalent theme across our public input this year speaks to the effectiveness of this engagement and the interest of the public in this work. So in addition to supporting the Vision Zero task force, engagement staff supported surveys and other interactive activities, events, partnerships with community-based organizations. And we also conducted a lot of safety-focused in-person engagement at community events throughout FFY 25, leading to a lot of this input. And finally, a sort of meta accomplishment, I guess, is that I think we've continued to improve the way that we're supporting engagement for the LRTP by and for other projects by improving our data collection, tracking, and analysis processes and procedures, especially via the new interactive activities on the LRTP webpage, as well as the updated dashboard. And also in the way that we report back to all of you on who we reach and what we hear through these regular updates. We're looking forward to continuing to build on this and ensuring that we are adding valuable insights to help inform your decision-making, particularly as it relates to the LRTP. This data can also inform other MPO planning efforts, particularly as we improve our ability to really narrow in on specific themes and topics within our comments. And the engagement dashboard that all of the analyses we've discussed today are derived from is a really great new tool that I think can really support all of this assessment and decision-making, and we're really excited to continue building on that. And with that, I'll pass it over to my colleague Gia to discuss a little bit more about our future plans.
Thank you, Stella, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gia Hong, and I'm the Public Engagement Coordinator at the Boston Region MPO. As we reflect on engagement efforts, and as Stella mentioned, we've identified a few gaps in our engagement from FFY 2025. Some of these gaps include reaching priority communities outside of inner core, engaging communities and populations that have been otherwise underrepresented, especially youth, and updating our demographic data collection protocols. For demographic data, as Stella mentioned earlier, we don't have a process for collecting demographic information from people we engage outside of traditional digital surveys. We can look at some proxies, but we like to refine our methodology to better understand who we are and are not reaching. We also want to better connect this data to data on what we're hearing from public input, so we can highlight the themes we're hearing from priority communities in particular. As we move into FFY 2026, we want to continue to refine our engagement practice and strategies around some core priorities. Our main priorities is addressing the gaps identified in FFY 25 engagement. We plan to do this by continuing to build and deepen our community relationships and partnerships. This work has been central to the MPO's engagement program in order to develop more meaningful engagement strategies and to engage stakeholders who are not well represented currently in our work. We hope to continue this work to also include more youth-focused groups and organizations, as well as organizations outside of the inner core. Another priority is building capacity for more active community-focused engagement through partnership activities and events. Again, our stakeholder relationships will be central to this, as well as broadening our internal staff capacity so that we can get out into the community more. We look forward to continuing this work and keeping you all updated as our progress continues. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Erin to wrap this up. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could go to the next slide. And just to finally bring this back to what we hope is an activity in applying this qualitative data to some decision-making processes, I want to just bring us back to the long-range plan and give you some highlights for some future activities that you guys can expect to come your way. Most notably, we are going to be asking you, the advisory council, our own internal staff, which priorities or goal areas are most of interest to continue honing in on in this long-range plan cycle. We're working from Destination 2050 as the base and hoping to add further information about performance metrics that we would like to see improve over the years, specific strategies and studies we could be pursuing as an MPO. And if you're to look at our vision, goals, and objectives, they're relatively comprehensive. So it'd be helpful for all different perspectives to have input on their different priorities and items that they're interested in the MPO exploring. So with that, we thank you all. Look forward to hearing any feedback, questions, comments you may have. And again, thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, Stella, Erin, Gia, for that wonderful presentation. Any questions? Very comprehensive. Not seeing any. Oh, here, Genro.
Yeah, thank you. I find this work really important and compelling, and it's been awesome getting to see it like quarter to quarter and year to year evolve. Also, just wanted to thank Stella for coming in, sharing some of the methodologies that staff have developed with some of our community engagement colleagues at the city. I think that's an area we're looking to do more deliberate like tracking of who we're reaching and who we're missing. And I think that what the MPO staff has been doing has been kind of really kind of developing a best practice that I don't see many other places. So it's been really good to learn from. My question, I know in the past, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, like some of this material has been shared in the story map, and now it appears that there's like a dashboard. I think, yeah, the dashboard makes a ton of sense in terms of being able to kind of just continually add to something, especially because I think working with a mix of quantitative and qualitative data, and kind of having enough to draw conclusions, I think it makes sense to kind of accrete it over time. But I was curious, like there was something. I appreciate these sort of updates where we take stock of what has happened in the past quarter or past year, because I think it kind of can. Sometimes I think the risk of having a dashboard is that like it's hard to kind of be like, oh, now is the time you should look at this again. And so I was sort of curious what you all were thinking in terms of the practice going forward, in terms of both like presentations back to the board, but perhaps other ways of like kind of prompting folks beyond just the board to take a look at this information and like interact with it. on a somewhat regular basis, but not quite like the, beyond just here's a dashboard and you can look at it at any time, but like, okay, how can I tell the narrative of what staff are seeing at a particular moment and drawing attention to it beyond just this board? That come across as a question?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And Erin and Gia, please feel free to jump in because obviously you all will be continuing to use this after I depart. But I think to take a stab at the question, Jen, one of our intentions with creating a dashboard was, I think, really to be transparent about what we're hearing, but also who we're reaching and where there are gaps. And I think, the flip side of that is for us as staff, that really creates like a strong impetus to be continually adjusting our strategies to address those gaps. And so certainly part of it is just for us, like this is out there and you can see where our priorities lie. And so then it hopefully makes a little more sense when, each month we're doing engagement, you can see where we are and where we're going in communities throughout the region. And that is really driven by this broader analysis. And then I think the other piece of it is that with the dashboard, it is iterative, it's a living document or a living platform. I hope, it is embedded on the engagement webpage eventually. And I think also linked on the LRTP page as sort of an input point. In addition to teeing up these quarterly discussions, just to make sure that you as board members have kind of a consistent flow of updated information about what we're doing and who we're hearing. And hopefully that can, help inform some of your thinking about how to respond to like community needs and priorities in some of the decisions that you're teeing up. I think we also want to use this eventually as kind of a way to close the loop with the people that we are engaging. So to kind of show, as we're going out regularly and doing things in communities, again, driven by some of this data about who we're reaching and who we're not reaching, we can also use this as a tool to validate some of what we're hearing and some of what we've collected in the past from communities, set understandings about, where we're operating and how. And so hopefully in that way, it is also like an ongoing engagement product that can be kind of a living source of engagement as well. Hopefully that answers the question, but feel free to jump in others if you have any other thoughts.
I'll just add that this is a developing practice. And as you had said, Jen, there's no real item to reference here. So if there are items that are helpful for you guys to be referring to, really value that feedback. So I'll take what you said and see what I can do.
Great. Jen, did you want to add anything or?
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you. And yeah, maybe I think would love to continue the conversation on that. And in the meantime, like I'll probably ask for a copy of the presentation just so I can share like the latest iteration of visualizations you've done with that same group of folks who saw like an earlier version, because I think there's been some changes and interesting conclusions drawn. And I'll specifically say it was really neat to hear or see some data backing up what I've found very clear intuitively, that bringing someone like who's a interpreter who's from the community that you're meeting in the field has made like an incredible difference in our engagement with like specifically like the Haitian community in Mattapan, the Chinese speaking community in the Chinatown area. Just when people see someone they know, it's like they just start conversations, and then that conversation can lead into transportation as opposed to just like like going in like a cold call almost. So it was neat to see that backed up with some data.
Great. Any other additional questions on this? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you all. This is great. Let's move on to our last agenda item, which is members' items. And what I want to do actually is hand this over to staff. MPO staff actually have received a recent update on a project. And I think it's important for everyone just to be aware. So maybe I'll pass it to Ethan on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So good afternoon, everybody. I'll reiterate, my name's Ethan LaPointe. I'm a senior transportation planner on MPO staff. I also work to manage the TIP. And to the point of working on the TIP on this, I did want to provide an update that on September 8th, the select board for the town of Ipswich voted to not continue advancing design for their Central and South Main Streets resurfacing project, which is currently funded through the TIP. The project is funded in federal fiscal year 2027 and AC'd through 2028 for about $15 million. Now, we're of course not requesting any action here today. We received a letter from the town reiterating this in writing on September 22nd, but it will be a part of discussion for development of the 2027 to 31 TIP program, which will likely start happening, the discussions for which will likely start happening in earnest in the fall. I can speak a little bit to the rationale behind the town removing the project. There was some, I believe, opposition in town against the intermittent bike lanes and signals that were included in the project, where members of the town wanted to remove traffic signals from the project and remove all of the bike lanes from the project. And this led to the project when that was not being, or rather when those concerns were not being incorporated into the design, as that's inconsistent not only with MassDOT's design process, but also with what the MPO board voted to advance. The town then voted not to continue advancing the project. So the project will need to be removed as the town's not moving forward with it. It was originally funded back in the 2019 to 23 TIP. So it's also been on the TIP for quite a few years at this point, but I'm happy to take questions on that if folks have any.
Any questions about this? And maybe this is, this can be a topic of conversation at TIPper committee as well, to better understand kind of the history and what's happened and what happened with this. But just this is a recent development, and we just wanted folks to be aware. Okay, thank you. Any other members' items, Len Diggins?
Yes. So cover your ears, Tom Bent. So I just want to let you all know that I have resigned from the Arlington Select Board because I moved to Arlington, and there's like this residency requirement where in order to be on the Arlington Select Board, I have to live in Arlington. So I had to step down. I'm here now, filling in for John Alessi. And as you all may know, it's usually the Senior Transportation Planner in Arlington who occupies, who fills in for the Select Board Chair. And so the town is looking to hire a new senior transportation planner. John had asked me to be his backup. I'm not sure what's going to happen. And once we hire a new new planner, or even before we hire a planner, I've made it clear to folks, that I am willing to occupy or fill in, in this role and various other roles in town, for as long as is desired, to make the transitions easier. But I just wanted you all to know that,
But Len, you moved to Somerville. You mean you said Arlington?
Yeah.
You moved to Somerville.
Oh yeah, no,
right?
I'm sorry. I moved to Somerville. Sorry about that. I moved to Somerville. So, yeah, sorry. So I said Arlington. Well, you see, Arlington. It's as I said in my goodbye or my step down speech. It's like Arlington, Somerville, Cambridge. I've lived in all three of those, with the exception of 1 year when since 41. I just think of it as Camberville, but anyways, yeah, I'm in Somerville, Winter Hill area, so Tom, I'm keeping more of an eye on you though, buddy. So that's it. Thank you.
Tom Bent, you've also retired, but
yeah, I retired, but still at it here. Yeah, I was going to correct Len because I did hear this rumor the other day that he moved to Somerville. And I said, wait a minute, he moved to Arlington. He lived in Arlington.
Yeah, sorry.
Len, I'm glad you finally seen the light to move to Somerville, and I expect to see you at things like the Fluff Fest and the Monster Mash coming up soon. So yeah, welcome to Somerville, and yeah, I'll be glad to. Len, you and I always have fun. So
yeah, we do.
All right, so but welcome to Somerville, and we're glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. It's still, like I said, it's still very much involved in Arlington. So we'll see how long. I participate, as a voting member of this board. I'll be, involved some way or another. That's it. Thank you.
I've already warned the city council that you're coming to Somerville, so.
No, they had to kick me and dragging and screaming to the select board in Arlington. I think my excuse would be I'm still involved in Arlington. So not that. I mean, I did enjoy the experience, but yeah, it's as I told people, I mean, it's nice to be as nice as you want to be and not be concerned that you're doing it because you want to be elected. So it's kind of liberating in a sense to just be a plain old resident, so yeah.
Well, thank you, Len. Thank you for your years of service on the MPO, and we look forward to you still participating as a citizen.
Yeah.
I wanted to also take this opportunity to just give folks an update on the MPO elections. So nominations were due on Monday, and all 4 of the sub-regional seats are running unopposed. So we did receive a nomination from the city of Framingham for the Metro West seat, the city of Somerville for the Inner Core seat, the town of Hull for the South Shore seat, and Acton, the town of Acton decided not to run again for the Magic seat, and the town of Lexington is running for that. So Lexington will be, they've previously been on the MPO off, now they'll be back on running unopposed. We're still going to get formal ballots out electronically to the chief executives. That'll probably happen next week. And we'll still formally do an election, and we'll formally announce the results at the MAPC Fall Council meeting, which is taking place in person, actually, in Arlington on October 29th. But the seats are unopposed, and yeah, that is the update there. So happy to answer any questions, or if there are any other members' items. Aaron, did you have your hand up?
I did briefly, thank you. I just wanted to share that we've just posted an associate director of transportation and mobility. So we have it's on the website. It's also on my LinkedIn. So if we're not connected, connect with me. And if everyone could just share that broadly with their networks, we have some incredible projects underway, and just really looking forward to finding that perfect person for that slot. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Aaron. So I don't see any other members' items. So can I get a motion to adjourn? Len,
I made the motion to adjourn.
Tom Ben.
I'll second that motion.
Great, wonderful meeting today. So without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and look forward to seeing everyone soon. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Eric. Bye.